Topic 1. Newsrooms around the U.S. are being closed down. Local newspapers are dying out at an alarming rate. Other newspapers are being bought up by hedge funds while their staffs are slashed. So to counter this, should the government invest in struggling newspapers? A concern would be the perceived lack of journalistic independence, but is this better than the alternative of simply not having these outlets at all? All right, talking about newspapers and newsrooms in general, really being destroyed. And I'm curious. I'm just off the top of my head. I'm actually curious if this is happening in other countries as well, because other countries also have to deal with the internet. So I'm wondering if they have an answer to this. But yeah, should the government invest in these outlets? Should they become like like a board member, like a governmental board member? So let's start with Empress and minute-long introduction, please. Wow, so poignant, so elegant,
Every
amazing.
time, every goddamn time. I'm so good at
Pro
this.
streamer moment.
So my first thoughts on this were twofold. One, how many of these journalists are, staying in the industry, right? That are leaving these newsrooms. Two, where are they going when they do? And one of the things that we've seen is a massive increase in independent journalists over the course of the past, I'd say, decade, right? However, one of the problems with independent journalism is where are these funding sources coming from, right? So we're seeing, these kind of small, sort of independent news organizations starting to form that are being funded by special interest groups. And we're seeing, journalists who are doing really great work, but are forced to rely on heavy corporate structures, be that something like YouTube or other means of distribution. So this is, at the end of the day, I think this is a pretty big workers' problem. And I think that you can, help solve the issue by treating it like a workers' problem and ensuring that, workers don't have to rely on shady funding sources through things like subsidies into public interest broadcasting, right? Things that the public needs access to, and ensure that you're getting unbiased information out there. Now, I also understand the concern with having quote unquote state-run or state-funded media, but this is something that in the US we've done for a very long time. I don't see why we've been shrinking these programs. We should be growing them.
Revolt Rise.
Yes, I think this is a major problem, and one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough is even though there's a bunch of new avenues for journalists to stay in the industry, one of the things they're lacking is the funding necessary to actually do competent, like first-person research in a lot of cases, and we're seeing a lot like a proliferation, basically, of opinions and op-ed style, news offerings rather than investigative journalism, and it's like the repercussions of this are like played out, in the biggest way on the local level. So lots of small towns no longer have any kind of resource to give them insight into all the different, machinations of the government and of industry in their area. And as a result, there's just like a major disconnect between the population and what's going on in the government. So I think that like this is a huge, huge problem, and I think the prescription for it is gotta be federal funding. I think the only way that we're going to be able to like overcome some of the like major problems that we're facing with even the model of the industry when it was working correctly, where you're constantly looking for advertisers and you're constantly out there basically like showing loyalty to certain brands in exchange for their financial support. I think that's hugely problematic, and a good way to get rid of it would be like by setting up a federal like either grant system or a federal agency that would be responsible for doling out the money in a nonpartisan and influential way.
Thank you. Counterpoints.
Yeah, so the only part that I care, or the only part of this that I care about is what Revolt Rise basically just talked about, which was that people are not informed about what's going on in their community. People are not informed about local news. People are not informed about, they can't even be involved in their community because they don't know what's going on with it. However, my solution is not to prop up print media. I think print media is dying. I don't think I've engaged with print media for the past decade. If we were talking about like local news stations, they seem to be holding on to like corporate, like the corporate structure, like the cable structure. Again, I hate local news and I think it's fucking garbage. We can get into that in the the general panel. I think that my largest concerns are going to be solved not by news, but by communitarianism. And I think we could have a Zoomer solution to this, which is basically we form Discord communities. We form local communities that are regionalized. We create our own little internet infrastructure to, and I'll wrap it up in a second. But we create our own parallel internet infrastructure. That way we can spread local news, make people aware of local events, organize on a communitarian level. And while the independent investigative arm of this is also something that might be sorely missed, I'm sure we could come up with a solution that doesn't mean propping up a business model that's probably 50 or 70 years old at this point. Yield.
Kyo-san.
Okay, so I think there's actually some really interesting points on this. A lot of these are caused by one of our local, I don't know how to put it any other way than like terrorists. It's Rupert Murdoch, which everyone here is very familiar with, who owns a lot of these papers. Now, we have tried to solve this problem in several different ways in Australia. One was to give people money to keep those papers open. Rupert Murdoch took that $50 million that was given to keep those regional papers open, kept the $50 million and shut down those regional papers because he's a massive piece of shit. Rupert Murdoch, I can't wait for you to die. I hope you hear this. And the other one was that they found that like Facebook was an issue in the way. Now, Rupert Murdoch, again, going to keep mentioning his name, was like lobbying the government to regulate Facebook for using its news and pay. And what they wanted to pass was a piece of legislation about how they wanted Facebook to pay news orgs and news corps every time they hosted news on their site, right? And what ended up happening was Facebook chucked a shit fit, banned every Australian news media piece off its platform until the federal government assuaged and decided, no, we won't we won't force Facebook to do that. We'll change the code, right? So like these like, I'm going to sound like a right winger for a second. Like these giant tech companies are also part of standing in the way of getting actually things done here, right? And they're part of the reason why this news media is seeing such trouble. Now, me personally, I'd like to see more investment into more state-run media stations. Like I think like the way that like the BBC is set up with how they have like you have to host a certain amount of points from each side, and the BBC is pretty well respected worldwide. They do a generally pretty good job. I like state media sources. The problem with state media sources, however, is that they're incentivized to sort of lobby whoever's in power. So for example, right now the ABC in Australia, the Australian Broadcasting Company, posts a lot of pro-liberal content, in part because the Liberals have consistently threatened to cut their funding and they have to keep begging to make sure they actually have any money to do their jobs, right? So I'd like to see more of that, but just giving these companies money to keep these businesses open just ends up in these businesses stealing that money. Murdoch has done it before and he will do it again.
So much. Next, Shadows.
Okay, so I had a lot of points, but now I'm not sure if I want to use them because someone else used them. I hate you, Connor. Stop being so goddamn smart and agreeable. Stop it. It's annoying. Yeah, I think Connor hit the nail on the head when he mentioned like Discord and whatnot, and you know how print media is dying. Because the thing is, print media is dying, and also, you know, more locally based institutions are not really things that people use anymore. People are more likely to use social media than they are to like go on church on the weekends, at least in our generation, Gen Z. You know, like the local institutions like churches are just becoming less common. People, you know, don't go to these, don't attend church as much anymore. It's been declining for decades on end. But I'm not saying like, oh my God, the American people need to go back to church on Sunday. My point is, local institutions aren't really becoming much of a thing, or at least purely local. So I think we could do what is similar to local cable media, which is yet again something else Connor mentioned. You know, there are like local stations for NBC and ABC in certain cities. I think in the same way that, you know, MSNBC.com like hosts articles, I think NBC can have an ABC and all sorts of different companies that do cable can also like have local articles. Now, obviously, I would need that, you know, in my nearest city because we have shit like the Chicago Daily Sun, the Chicago Tribune. there's no shortage of print outlets for the city of Chicago. But for other areas, like let's say, I don't know, I'd say Milwaukee or St. Louis, nearby cities. I think if NBC or ABC wants to have a cable station, I think they should also have a website for articles that local journalists that unfortunately don't work at a local paper anymore because it's shut down can now write for them. I think that'd be a nice solution.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Zardoz, for subscribing, and Epidemics for using your Prime gaming on this channel. Thank you so much, both of you, for investing in this community. All right, let's go American Nacho.
All right. So yeah, honestly, I'm kind of glad to hear that like the newsrooms and the papers and magazines and this kind of like legacy media are like going out of business, because this is this is capitalism, working at its finest. Like these organizations, these outlets are all failing us as reliable sources for information, and so as a result, they're all losing traffic, and we're all moving to the internet, as well as in combination with the fact that like the rise in internet traffic and new generations like growing into the roles of like boomers. So the only problem that comes, because I pretty much agree with most of what Counterpoints brought up and said. So the only problem with that would be now we have to take into consideration like the fact that a lot of these major apps and platforms that are available to us now are basically monopolized or becoming monopolized. Bezos is going to buy up all the stuff he can. Gates is going to buy up all these apps. And all these apps are going to have a lot of competition. So inevitably, we're going to have to look at something, like as much as we all hate the Orange Man, the fact that he was bringing Section 230 to the table is probably a good thing. We could look into something like reinterpreting that, whatever that is, as subsection C, or I think it is, or my favorite option, which would be providing some kind of public town square. So if we did want to subsidize something, I wouldn't want it to be the newsrooms. I would want it to be like a government run, I don't know, Facebook or something like that. It would probably be pretty terrible, but it's a start or a step in the right direction, I think. And that's it.
Thanks so much. All right, let's go to Spartacus.
Before Nacho talked, I thought I was going to be one of the only people to say this, but the media has failed the American people. We've seen this again and again and again and again. Since 2015, they've had one target on their list, and they've done whatever they can to take out that target. No matter what the Americans thought of the news media, the media has consistently used fear-mongering tactics against the American people to get them to do what they want to do. They're pushing a narrative, and now they're seeing that what comes from the other side of that narrative. They're seeing the American people don't back this. They're seeing that the American people don't want to watch news anymore because they don't think it is actually true. They don't believe it's actually center. They think that it's got a bias to it. And so I think it's really showing us where the media has failed us. And I think that since it's producing more individual journalism, more independent journalism, I think that this is going to provide an overall good to the community, with there being more independent journalists than journalists that are trying to push an agenda.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Layman. Layman, who we're always, well, he's here, and we have emotions. But no, we're always happy to have Layman here. Thank you for coming back. Layman, first, I'll give you a moment to introduce yourself to the audience if you'd like. And then secondly, we're talking about the first topic on the newsroom thing, so give your introduction for that as well. Please, Layman.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Layman. I am a enlightened, centrist, galaxy-brained, Canuckistanian, anarcho-Canadian, whatever the fuck you want to call me. I don't really give a fuck.
Hey, what about libertarian leafism? Come on, bro.
Libertarian leafism, anarcho-leafism, authoritarian Canuckianism, whatever you want to call it. I don't really give a shit. I am happy to be here. As for the topic, newspapers dying, don't really give that much of a fuck. Mostly because we're all sort of moving into this digital age now, and technology and people's attitudes and how people use technology, that's eventually gonna have to catch up to that. So like Nacho said earlier, that's just the market doing its work. That's just technology advancing in a way that seems organic. And yeah, I'm not really too concerned about that. If you really, really, really like wanted to keep the newspapers in, you can maybe like have some local like municipal policy where you just give like some tax breaks to people who want to start like a newspaper company. Like if you really want to do that, it's not something I'd ever prioritize. But like, yeah, I don't really give a shit. Like, let them fucking die. It's no big deal to me. But I do think that like, news media should continue to do its thing, and to, it's a very essential part to freedom of speech. It's something that I value, and I think people should be allowed to have news media. So maybe Sprouticus and I will have a bit of a tussle over the whole, like, the news media has failed everybody, because I'm really not a big fan of the whole populist shtick. So yeah.
Okay. So before we jump into this, one, we can expand this past like print media, right? And in fact, most of these print outlets have a digital arm, right? Still, even if, and I've never fucking touched it. I don't remember the last time I touched a newspaper. It was so long ago. We can acknowledge that we're better than our boomer relatives, right? We've evolved to digital.
Yeah, fuck them.
Yeah. but still, at least I think, and maybe I hope everyone agrees, that news outlets, and having a varied amount of news outlets, I feel like our conservatives should agree with me on this one, a varied amount of news outlets, competition within the marketplace would be a good thing. But
fuck yeah.
On the other end, right, I guess, are you on layman's side saying, well, the marketplace is saying that you're unnecessary, and so, oh wow, he was giving us a show. Thank you for that.
Well, okay, so maybe I can find.
Go ahead.
Maybe I can find some common ground here, right? So like, if a lot of these companies just switch to digital, then maybe they could just like avoid the whole them all collapsing and going the fuck out of business and shit.
I think they're moving this direction, and they're still going out of business. So
the problem is that the businesses that are failing aren't like the ones that you're thinking of. You aren't thinking of like WAPO or fucking CNN Digital, whatever the fuck, right? We're talking about like Hick and Lukem newspaper from Whoville, Tennessee, right? And these places have like these newspapers. They serve important functions for the community to understand what's going on around them, and how, like, in terms of local politics, these things are super important. The problem is that there isn't like the resources that are needed for a newspaper are like pretty significant, not like insignificant, and those things tend to scale better when you're talking about like federal news and things that are like super keen to read about. Not like a town with like 200, 300 people who may not be able to afford that newspaper. Now, Sinclair Media, I think it is from memory, is the one that's been like taking the brunt from keeping these newspapers in print, because they have like they're like right wing. They look to like Murdoch, for example, like takes a hit on a lot of news media because he's more willing to push his like agenda on politics to do so, right? And a lot of these medias are willing to do it. It seems like the only way to solve these regional issues, because this is a regional issue. These aren't like national newspapers that are going out of business, right? This isn't the market at work because the newspapers are failing them. This is the market at work because there's like only a handful of people who can purchase these newspapers that are interested in this product, even though it's an important product to have, right? This is a product that's being failed by the market first, not the other way around. It seems like the better way to do this would be to have like some government arm in these areas, and say we have like a newspaper that services the Hunter region, and a newspaper that services like the wider Gainesville region, right? Like, I don't know if like these are just like Australian regions, but like those like rural areas that have like a whole bunch of towns in them.
So it seems like the answer would still
So what
be...
do you mean? Well, Keo, just what do you mean? What do you mean by a government arm? Do you mean like you would have like a sort of
probably like at the state level would be the way to go in terms of like regional newspapers that have like state news, and you have some legislation that would be around like how fair that state news had to be. Like I mentioned before, the BBC does a generally pretty good job of being pretty balanced.
Yeah, the CBC in Canada too is pretty good at that. Yeah, so you could have like an option like that, and then allow people to start their own private things if they want to. Yeah.
Well, okay, so sorry for jumping in,
Connor and then Shadows.
Yeah, so basically, here's my thing: is like I don't give a shit about preserving like print media, but I do think that there's something to be said for the essential services that print media or like parochial fucking institutions used to serve. So, for instance, if it's important important to keep up on the actions of your legislature, your township, what they're doing politically, all that kind of stuff. If that's an important thing, if there's like a specific environmental bill that regionally affects your township or your county, that's very specific, then that's the news that you're not going to find on your Facebook live feed. And on top of that, this is a real opportunity for some nefarious characters to fucking sneak in the back door, because nobody knows. If nobody knows, nobody cares, right? So you can sneak in a bunch of shit. But with that being said, I feel like you could probably replicate the digital infrastructure, or you could replicate this infrastructure on the digital level, and basically say, like, hey, for everybody who's interested in, so I live in an area, let's just say between Orange and Lake County in Central Florida, okay? So if you're interested in politics that affect Orange and Lake County, here's this fucking Discord server, here's like the, here's the community fucking links, here's what's going on, here's the state shit, like all that kind of stuff, and maybe there needs to be a paid person who mods this Discord. Maybe there needs to be a paid person who actually in each county that goes out and does shit. But I don't see why you can't cut like 90% of the fucking costs. You don't need a building. You don't need a fucking newsroom. You barely need reporters. So you
Have
basically
everyone work remotely. Everyone could work remotely. Yeah.
You could literally cut
Yeah.
you could cut 90% of the administrative costs of a newsroom, and then literally just pay regional newspaper editors and mods maybe like 30 or 40K a year. Now instead of your overhead being like a couple million, your overhead is like 120 grand for a county.
You look very perplexed, Prime.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, sorry, go.
No, yeah. So if you could, maybe I missed part of it. All right. So like, what was the purpose of cutting all this staff? Maybe I missed because I feel like
Not the staff. It's
it's not competitive. It just doesn't work.
Yeah,
So for instance, all of our media. Well, I would be interested to hear how it works. Because basically all of our media, Prime, how much fucking teeth, by the way, I'm sub to Prime right now, so if you're not sub to Prime, you're a fucking asshole. But how much teeth do you have to pull to get between 5 and 30% of your audience to fucking meet, basically to put their money where their mouth is as far as consuming content? How much of a pain in the balls is that?
So my reply to this would like generally be sorry.
He loves his audience, and it's not a pain in the balls at all. That's what he was gonna say. So anyways, the fucking point is that if we want people to put their money where their mouth is, then you have to lower that bill, because most Zoomers, most millennials are not used to paying for information. So we wake up, we turn on our phone, and we start consuming information. So you have to find a way to make it fucking convenient.
Quality journalism requires an investment. So hold on, let's go to Shadows. Sprout. Sorry, it's Shadow. Hold on, I had a list.
I would like to solve
Shadows Nacho and then Kill. All right.
I want to solve the problem before anybody else moves on. The paper needs to be regionalized, and it needs to be a fucking monthly subscription service, fucking $5 a month or some shit like that. That's what it needs to be, and it needs to be all digital, and it needs to have a very minimal overhead yield.
Okay, let's go to Shadows.
Okay, so I was gonna make a similar point to what Layman is making, in the sense that I don't think anyone here has a problem with the idea of government-funded stuff, because I don't know if all the Americans people have here are familiar with NPR, but NPR actually does a pretty good job consistently of not being that partisan. So I don't know if there are any conservatives who disagree, but there's also a conservative I wanted to talk to specifically, because Nacho brought up Section 230, and I always get really triggered whenever conservatives bring up Section 230, because they start talking about shit, and it immediately sounds like they don't know what they're talking about. So Nacho, what is your problem with Section 230, and do you understand why the certain protection is important? I'm not sure if you're against a publisher
it's the subsection
platform
C 2A, where they say any action voluntarily taken in good faith to restrict access or availability to material that the provider or user considers to be obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, or otherwise objectionable. That's the part I have an issue with. Like, I think this part specifically needs to be a little like reinterpreted or removed altogether, because otherwise objectionable just leaves it wide open, so they're able to get away with essentially whatever they want. Like if I can deem this otherwise objectionable, and just be like a completely conservative or a completely leftist like platform and just be like, screw you all. But if I'm going to do that, then you're not really operating under what this describes as like an open platform anymore. You're operating more as like a publisher. Like when you're a news a magazine or like a newsroom like publisher, you're responsible for everything that is put out on as like a publisher, right? So that's why you fire and hire different journalists, because anything that you put out and say can come back to you, and you can be like held legally like responsible for whatever you say. In the case of like a platform, you're not responsible for anything that your users put on your platform, as long as it follows these guidelines.
Let's go to Q.
Okay, so
Does that make sense?
Oh, you want to respond that, and we can respond, and then we'll go to Q and Sprout.
yeah, so I guess I'll do this in a way where it's not back and forth, but I will put this out there in the sense that it is important that these platforms do have a publisher protection. And the reason why is because if they are solely and completely a platform, then there would be legal issues with them removing material that is protected by the First Amendment. Okay, and you can say it's worse for them. I would say it's probably worse for them to lose their platform protection because they'd be sued out of existence. But the problem is if they have to act completely like a platform and have no publisher protections, guess what? No one's going to fucking advertise there. Like a good example would be on Facebook. Daily Wire advertises a lot there. They get 40 million monthly clicks. If Facebook has to allow fucking Nazis on its platform, guess what? The Daily Wire isn't going to advertise there. So many websites are going to not be profitable anymore, and that's not a good thing. These companies should be allowed to be profitable.
I get you. I really want to have this conversation, but I did want to respond to what everyone else said too. But I'm making like a note if we want to come back to this in just a minute, because I wanted to say something about what everyone else is talking about first. I say leave it to the private sector and the local government levels, like the local level governments, as far as like funding a paper. Like if they want to if the local government like says like, hey, this paper is really great, they really provide a lot of like really good information for the community. They're keeping up with things that the rest of us want them to keep up with. We really like them, and they want their tax money to be going towards this. And I think that's that's up to the local level governments. But I really just say leave it to the private sector and the local government. If we're staying consistent with the government behavior, they normally tend to leave out small businesses anyway. So I mean, this is right in their wheelhouse of behavior anyways. Small businesses are normally left, hanging out to dry. If the local level governments picked up for that, that would be a really good thing. But I don't know if we want this like happening.
They don't have the funding
federal
to,
level or
Nacho.
not.
That's the problem. Right, like so I actually had 4 things that I wrote down and I put into my chat, right? And one of the problems that I mentioned, right, was the lack of funding for local resources to be able to produce this kind of content. If you go to your local library, right, they are severely underfunded and often in most parts, particularly rural America, because that's the kind of media outlets we're talking about, barely hanging on. Right? People need the resources to be able to create this content for their communities. So when Counterpoints over here is saying, oh, it doesn't really require much funding, right? And American, you're here saying, well, just leave it to local governments. We've tried that. That's kind of what we're doing right now in terms of trying to help indie journalists, and it's doing nothing. There needs to be some kind of intervention here, or we're just going to have corporate consolidation of media all over again, because that's what's happening to local media right now with Sinclair Media and other organizations like YouTube.
What?
Yeah,
Okay,
but
so
I mean, even those media outlets, I mean, this form of media is going out of, it's going out of style. I mean, everybody's coming to the internet for their media anymore.
Right.
So who does that?
We are all using resources to create this podcast right now.
Yeah, right. So what's going to be the difference in like who funds it if they're going out of business anyways? You know what I mean? Like only those who are really doing it well are going to survive.
I said fund indie journalists.
Yeah, but a lot of them are going out of business too. You got to remember, because they're being bought up by these like major like venture capital groups and basically being closed down and or being consolidated to be as hyper profitable as possible. Where you, instead of having local news that's actually local, you've got like these regional deals or whatever, and they just become an advertising platform. And it's silly. But I mean, I think that like talking about the
make it
difference
quick
in the,
because we got other people in line.
Sure. Talking about the difference between like hyper social media, like social media, and all the dishonest opinions that are available there. I think that that's like one of the greatest arguments to keep the paper media or physical media around, because it gives an air of authoritarian,
I would be okay. Like, I like the idea, like, on its face. Like, I care about smaller businesses a lot more than indie journalism, much more than I would rather have this money going to like larger corporations. My only problem is, like, those are the people who have the power to like lobby for some of this money and find a way to write a bunch of fucking loopholes to end up taking a slice of the pie. And the slice that they take as these major moguls already is going to be a lot bigger. So it's going to. How much of that money is actually going to make it down to the
Let's go to
indie journals?
Kill.
That would be my only
Let's
problem.
go to Kill, then Sprout, and Connor.
So there's a real it seems like earnest opinion to move towards like everyone just needs to go digital, right? There's a massive sector of the population, who just can't access digital media. I don't know if any of you like have parents and you've ever tried to show them like anything. They didn't grow up with like electronic devices. It's not something they're comfortable using or can even use, right? Like I'm just convinced at this point that my mother is like epistemically unable to use a digital device. Okay. And there's this group of people are like the people that are generally like the most served by their regional newspapers, that are generally the ones that need this information, that get like it fucking heaps of gum. I don't know, dude. Right. So like just saying like, let's go digital, let's get them all into Discord servers. Like that's sick for the 20-something-year-olds. But a lot of these people, like even at like fucking 50 and 60, right? Like who aren't relatively that old in terms of technology, like 40 to some extent, right? These people don't even know how to use like Discord. Right? They specific they can access the internet, but like they're like not as familiar with these apps, which is it's a cool idea for us, right? Like here's a good example. Is like I like when it comes to like teaching stuff, I've used Discord in teaching practices, right? Because it's a really great platform. I believe wholeheartedly in Discord. I've been like a Discord moderator on one of the largest servers for like 4 or 5 years now. I love the platform and I think there's a lot of potential there. But with that being said, right, not everyone's as comfortable using it. It's got a hurdle going over that, right? And then after that, you've also got like the people who just can't use media in general. And they're the ones that are generally the most served by those regional papers. The ones that like know or care the most about those things. And seeing them go to business is like they're the ones that are going to be the hardest hit. So just like saying, yeah, fuck it, dude, let's just let the papers die. Like, I don't know if that's like necessarily a good idea.
Keo, you can easily just transition into this over a longitudinal period of time, right? So
what's happening now? What's happening now?
Good. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that you could pace it in a manner where those who still need it, the boomers, whatever the fuck, you could pace it in a way where like those minority of people are still getting what they need. But then as they die out and more young people are entering into the fold, you could just have it die slowly over time. You'd have to find some way to do that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I would be much more okay with
Right.
that if this was the plan. Like if we were to like subsidize them for now and then move into this. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not waiting anymore. I'm not waiting anymore. I'm butting in. No, I'm butting in. I'm butting in. I'm butting in. I'm not waiting anymore. I've had my hand up for probably about 5 to 10 minutes.
Damn.
I'm not waiting anymore. So
you're right.
So we're gonna go back. I was supposed to go after Shadows, and I have something to say about what Shadows is talking about with Section 230. You know what? Facebook and Twitter and these people that you're saying deserve this they deserve the protections from being a publisher. You know what they found otherwise objectionable? They found a story from New York Post about Hunter Biden's laptop that was 100% true. They found that as otherwise objectionable.
Was it 100%?
Oh, please don't go.
Let him go. Sprout.
Wouldn't pick it up.
Let him go.
Fuck off, it was 100%.
Let him go. We can respond afterwards.
And to add on to that, to go further into the agenda that news media has had for quite a while, Time Magazine posted an article underneath the name "The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election," in which they state that the media had an agenda for the 2020 election. So for people that are arguing this media doesn't have an agenda, the media does have an agenda. They've made it very clear, and they don't deserve protections from publisher, and neither do social media pages that have these protections that don't follow their end of the deal. They don't deserve to have that part of Section 230 either.
I only approve if it was a gay agenda.
Spartacus, every individual human being on the face of the planet has an agenda. It is not possible to live one's life without having some manner of bias and some manner of agenda implemented into some manner of media which they are creating and putting forward out to the public. It is not possible.
So Layman, you're backing big tech in the otherwise objectionable true story that came from a news outlet.
I am responding.
What I said was that we should decentralize.
I am responding to the idea that media being biased is inherently a bad thing. It's not possible to not be biased. The question is, how are you controlling that? And what balance of power are you implementing to make sure that big tech, which I am also concerned about, I know it didn't sound like it to you earlier, but I'm also concerned about this. I'm in favor of breaking up monopolies through some manner of trust busting. I'm in favor of that. I've been defending the shit out of the bill that's implemented in Canada that does this, Bill C-10, which a lot of conservatives here think that it's fucking violation of freedom of speech when it isn't. It does exactly the goal that you're intending on. That you're aiming towards. So like, I'm in favor of shit like that. I just don't think the media being biased is an argument against you know what I mean? I was just criticizing that. That's all.
Okay, but media stations and technology working together in order to push a certain president ahead of another is election interference at its very least.
All right. Is it on the scale of foreign election interference, or do we not want to get into that?
Oh boy.
Let's look into that. Like,
You can't homogenize media like this, though. There isn't like one media. There is many media outlets, many people who write their own individual stories, their own individual opinion pieces. This is freedom of speech at work. That's how it works.
Listen, they're all fucking libs, though. Okay.
But we can actively disempower and decentralize algorithms and media structures, right? Like we can't necessarily exist in a corporatized media world. We don't necessarily have to exist in a world where YouTube and Facebook algorithms, right, and their preferences in terms of corporate interests dictate the way that we have our news, right? Not just media, right? And not just entertainment, but our news delivered to us.
So let's
until they shut Parler down, right? Until they shut down social media to try and do what you're saying. Amazon.
I don't think you have to shut it down. I think there are other ways that you could go about it. Personally, I'd love to see Facebook shut down and YouTube shut down and completely restructured and fucking trust busted. But I don't think that's a very feasible policy. Okay.
Anyway, just as a quick note, does anyone here think that like Amazon Web Services shutting down Parler was a good thing? Hands up. No one here's gonna make that argument. Okay.
I'm just stating that's what happened. Is so Empress is talking about something, and I'm saying that Parler was shut down, and there was rejoice from the left when Parler was shut down.
Yeah, because they don't like Parler. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
but most people are like ignorant to all of this monopoly shit that we're talking about, right? They're just excited because
I still don't think Amazon has to do business with you, so I don't see like.
Yeah, I mean,
again, so like my solution here is decentralize it. If you decentralize it, guess what? I can still choose not to host your web service. Like,
right. We shouldn't be in a position
you
where
just go to someone else.
Choice. That's
like Parler did.
Let's go to.
No, we understand. Sorry, go on.
Oh no. Yeah, let's go to Connor, and then we'll jump back into this. Go ahead, Connor.
Yeah. So I appreciate lefties trying to serve everybody at all times and consider every fucking consideration at all times, but the boomers have basically fucked us in so many goddamn ways it's fucking imaginable. The fact that you give a shit about the way that they consume fucking boomer ass fucking media, like it's not even on a billionth of my fucking concerns. Fuck boomers, let them fucking all right, anyways. Yeah, so it fucking you know what? You know all the shit sandwiches that they've handed us over the past 30 years? They can be handed one fucking shit sandwich, and that.
But
shit
it's not
sandwich
just boomers. That's the important thing to recognize here. It's also people living in rural areas who don't have access to digital resources as easily. It's also people who are lower class and can't afford access to those digital resources and have to rely on print and TV media and radio media.
You're making an objection I'm hoping to comment on.
Yeah, but people who are lower class got the Obama.
I'm memeing about boomer side. Fucking wait until I'm done memeing before you object, okay? Jesus Christ. All right, so I just wanted to back up fucking Layman real quick. All media has agenda. The question is like, how do you balance that agenda? So if there's a left bias or a right bias, or if we bring back the fucking fairness doctrine or some shit, we need to have a conversation about how we represent multiple fucking perspectives at the same time. and I've heard the term Sinclair Media half a dozen times over the past half hour. You know those creepy fucking advertisements where every local platform was repeating the same shit? So, if I heard Empress correctly, fucking Sinclair was the people who did that, and they're a right-wing org. So all the fucking right-wing fucking conservative people were saying, this is groupthink, this is manipulation, this is the media at work to fucking capture your tiny brain. That wasn't a fucking left-wing organization doing that shit. That was a right-wing organization doing that shit. All right, then hopefully, Empress, I'll address some of your concerns right here. I just wanted to talk about Boomerside and Sinclair Media real quick. So you said that we don't have to rely on algorithmic functions. I think algorithmic functions are so powerful that they're ultimately unavoidable. But what we can do is we can create a parallel substructure. So what I'm talking about is if we wrote down on a fucking piece of paper the necessary fucking components of local media, information about local governments, information about local environmental projects, information about local crime stories, information about this, that, the fucking other, okay? There are either volunteers or part-time employees who can fulfill those fucking informational needs, and there's a digital infrastructure that we could create for free. You brought up some of the barriers to entry that we were talking about with rural fucking shit. Half the motherfucker layman's in fucking Canada, which isn't even a real country, and he has access to the internet.
I don't. Look, all I'm saying is that's a really
expensive to be on the same side. God damn.
Final point before I leave. Kyo-san is not only not in a fucking country that doesn't exist. If it does exist, it's on the bottom of the fucking flat plane of the fucking flat planet.
It's actually
okay?
just a
So
rectangle.
and giant fucking like spiders are just like crawling on the bottom of the flat Earth.
The planes.
Yeah, he's right on the edge of the flat Earth. He's about to fall off of the flat Earth. Yeah.
So the fact that like I understand, like, as lefties, you guys have to care about everybody who doesn't have access to fucking equal shit. But this is where I'm happy to be center right, where I don't have to give a fuck about boomers or people who can't even compete with Australians or Canadians. I'm sorry. If you can't compete with Australians or Canadians, it sucks to suck. Yield.
So the response there would be that, like, this isn't just like some like small subsect of the culture, like to the boomers. Like, this is like a good third of the aged populace, right? Who aren't properly on.
Good. They shouldn't even have voting rights. Fuck boomers, okay?
Hey.
Listen, they've fucked up the entire goddamn planet, handed us a fucking
I'm
shit
just saying,
sandwich,
are you
and
hearing
still
this,
want
boomers
us-
at home? He
and they
wants to
still-
take away your voting rights. This is what
Okay.
the right wants
You
to
think
do to
boomers
you.
are on the
This is why
and
they
they
vote
like
still-
three
for
boomer banks,
AOC.
And they
The real
still want us to
centrist.
fucking pay for their fucking golden ticket on their way out. Meanwhile, they handed us a fucking shit sandwich. Again, if somebody handed you 10 sandwiches made with white bread that was fucking mixed with diuretic shit inside it, would you be pissed off? Or do they have the reason to be pissed off if you turn around and you hand them one turd sandwich?
There's
I don't
still
think so.
plenty of time to put them in the bad home, though. You know what I mean? Like, it's not over yet. You can still put them in the one that they don't feed you every day, and maybe they bruise your ribs a little bit. Like, there's plenty of time left, man. Don't.
All right, mom and dad, I still love you.
Counterpoint, did you run out of toilet paper? Is that what this is about?
No, I've been fucking, dude. I'm buying a bidet next week. I'm about to be
big
all
toilet,
fucking,
dude.
I'm about to be all fucking bougie
He's
up in
sitting
this
on a
bitch.
bed right now. You can't
Yeah.
see him from the waist
The
down.
problem is, if we
Fuck.
take that approach, we'll never get anything passed, right? Like, you have to, like, as a centrist, you should understand that you have to, like, play to both sides, and you have to play, when it comes to news, you have to get rid of the bias and be fair, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It
That's
should be.
why
No.
that's why I'm in
News should
favor
be
of-
unbiased. Yes, news should
No,
be
the-
unbiased. News should be the
Hold on,
facts.
hold
News should be as what is happening.
Nobody's reading
There
AP,
should be commentary. You can have commentary, but specifically label it commentary and don't mix it with the news. News should be what is happening. News should be the facts as they get them, with no commentary about it.
Let
but
me,
it's-
as a
So, wait,
centrist, hold
why
on.
isn't everyone just reading AP? Why do all these other places have like a whole bunch of subs? Like, no one's reading AP.
Because I read AP.
I read AP
I
too,
read
but,
AP.
like, you know what I
Okay,
mean?
so hold on.
We're a
Let
bunch
me.
of, like,
No
Let me
one
marry
who
political
matters in
nerds,
this
okay?
world reads AP.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
true. So hold on. I want to marry Spartacus or Sprouticus and fucking Empress real quick. So what Empress said that was super fucking based is you could basically you could like crowdfund local journalists, like the non-biased and always ethical Tim Pool. And what fucking Sprouticus fucking said what Sprouticus fucking said is that like news and commentary should be separated. One of the fairness doctrine, like the update of the fairness doctrine that I proposed in the past, is basically that anytime you're running a commentary show, you literally have an addendum at the beginning of the fucking show, and you say this is not a specific news program. This is a news commentary program. Okay, and literally segregate the one that is just facts, maybe biased facts, but just facts, and the ones that are here's what your opinion should be.
You mean like
I mean,
editorials?
to be fair,
Yeah.
Yeah, there should
to be fair,
be.
most places already do this, right?
But
Yeah.
Does the internet do this? Does corporate media do this?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. It's like NYT.
Wait, then what are we
Opinion.
complaining
Yeah, but
about?
it's like
Fox
in the
News
fine
is
print.
totally
People just fucking
unbiased.
ignore it.
Okay, fine.
People
Yeah,
just
okay.
ignore it. Like Hannity repeatedly says he's not a journalist. People take what he says as the news, for example, right?
But
They
you
do this with Tucker
were
Carlson.
just
too.
complaining. You were just complaining about Rupert Murdoch. How can you say that this isn't a problem, but say that you want to kill Rupert
I'm not
Murdoch?
saying it isn't a problem. I'm saying that what you're saying already happens. It is absolutely a problem. And I'm to be clear, I'm not advocating for killing Rupert Murdoch. I'm just saying, like, if his death were accelerated, I wouldn't be sad. Okay.
Oh, okay. So
Hey,
I
look,
said
all
something
I'm
you
saying is,
like.
hasn't
You
what's his
agree
face
with
been
Boomer
sober
side.
for 2 years now?
You agree with Boomer side. I heard it.
Only if like Rupert
We found
Murdoch is the
common
only
ground.
okay?
Wonderful.
He's not saying he should die. He's just saying when he does die, he won't be missed.
Okay.
That's all.
Well,
What I'm
just be
saying
missed,
is
I'll be
acceleration
booking a
is what it's
flight
based.
to wherever
Let's
his
chill.
grave is, and may or may not defecate on the grave. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, how about
Okay.
this? How about we have okay. Can we all agree that there should be like a balance? And let's say we have a balance of like state-run media and private media. And we have the state-run media to be that sort of mediary, sort of more bipartisan than what you would normally expect sort of thing. And then you have that there as a sort of like public utility kind of intermediary, something like in Canada, we have the CBC. In Ontario, they have TVO, which is like the most moderate fucking program that you can even think of. It's a great fucking program. A lot of people love it. A lot of people here love the CBC. And that does that job effectively. And then you give people the right to still have like private media if they want to. And then you can have them compete like that.
Hey, Sprouticus will answer your question. Hey,
The
Sprouticus, what
US
do you think
needs that.
what do you think about NPR?
What do I think about NPR? I use their sources a lot. I mean, I read a lot of different news. I use CNN. I mean, I use all kinds of sources when I'm debating with people, because oftentimes when I'm debating with the left, it works best if I use left sources, and oftentimes when I'm debating with the right, it works best if I use the right sources, because then there's no debating on like whether or not it's a good source or not. So I typically
Do you think NPR is unbiased?
not necessarily no.
What do you think their bias is?
I would say
I think
NPR is left of center.
I think they're slightly left.
It's not severe, but
NPR is biased towards the Rockefeller Foundation and the oil companies that fund them, I think, more so than anything else.
I think NPR is slightly left.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah,
This is
so
irrelevant.
all I was getting to was that was like a sober and great take. I was hoping that Sprouticus was going to be like, no, they're a bunch of fucking demon rat pieces of shit,
Well-
pedo motherfuckers. That's what I was going for. So Sprouticus, you disappointed me.
I'm sorry
I feel
about
like
that.
I should clarify the algorithms
Next
thing that
time.
I said, right? When I say disempower algorithms, right, I was talking specifically about centralized algorithms, things like Facebook and YouTube, that in order to engage in a lot of, or Discord even, right? In order to engage with these systems, right, and kind of get your message out there, you kind of have to engage with these large, corporatized, opaque, and honestly kind of destructive algorithms, right? And what I'm saying is there are ways that even while operating within those systems, we can work to take power away from them. And one of the ways that we can do that is, like I said, by empowering indie content creators, by taking the
Like
I don't
Tim
want to
Pool.
use this word, but I guess means of production in the quite literal sense of the word here. YouTube will actually provide you centers for production, right? That you can go to, you can film your shit, right? They'll give you the cameras, they'll give you the backdrops, they'll give you the lighting, they'll give you everything. Why don't we have stuff like this at our local libraries? My university does it. They have a one-button recording studio in their library. This is like a program, right? That's pretty affordable to set up for very small grants. You can issue to local libraries to have a one-button recording studio. This would expand and empower local journalists massively, right? Taking the cost of actually having to own that equipment yourself away, right? Again, giving high-speed internet access to local libraries so that people can upload and download quickly. Actually give them reasonable access to getting their message out there, right? right? Have educational sessions at local. Like there's a lot of things that you can do that would empower independent journalists and kind of take away power from those corporate structures. Because at that point, it's just, hey, you're spreading your message in your community, and that like rural community information sharing. That's literally my research specialty. So if you really want to empower these kinds of communities and ensure that they're getting the information they need, like they're the ones to go to. Empower the communities themselves.
So then
I don't think that
I'm
you
not
can do this through local funding alone. That's my concern.
Empress,
maybe-
I'm not opposed to that in principle. I just don't think that's enough to take on like huge, like multinational,
enough.
like
I agree.
monopolized. Yeah. So like something that Canada, something that like the good old J Trudeau Jr. Has done is he's passed this bill that's kind of controversial because it's sort of similar. A lot of people are reacting it similarly to the net neutrality craze, the whole Bill C-10 thing. That's the name of the bill. And basically what it tries to do is it tries to take like local Canadian content, and it basically makes it so when these companies are operating within our own borders, they are required to basically have a quota to have like, let's say like 20%, 30% of the media that they have is like sort of local, like national shit, basically. That sort of operates within Canada, and that sort of gets propped up there, like a local Canadian artist or like musician or something. We already do this for things like radio, and we do this for things like TV. We do it too. You know, we do shit like this here. That's something that they've tried to do recently to sort of, you know, prop that up. And I don't know if it's going to work. I think that there's a lot of debate around whether or not it'll work. But I think that that's like a step in the right direction. So.
Yeah,
How do you feel about that?
I would probably want to like be trying this in like a larger area or like maybe a rural area that did have the proper funding to do this, to see if we can scale it up. Like once we get it working, like I like the idea that the left likes to try things, and I give them credit for that all the time. Okay, I hate that the right tends to not get as involved in some of these things or not like stick their necks out. So like the idea seems like good as long as we do it like very carefully, I guess. So
yeah. You just got to be careful. You just got to ease people's concerns.
Yeah. So one of the things. So I know I mean a lot, but Empress keeps impressing me with ideas that I actually really agree with. So for instance, like a lot of the right wing bootstrapping, whatever, comes from the fact that there's some level of public infrastructure that allows you to succeed if you're strong willed enough. Who was it? Ben Carson, after he got done trying to stab a young man in the belt buckle. After he got done with that, he went to like the public library and he just read like a bunch of fucking books, and he became a galaxy brain. And now he thinks that the pyramids were used to store grain, but that's kind of a different meme. So Ben Carson is one of the most one of the most talented fucking neurosurgeons on the planet, and the dude's a fucking idiot. But at the same time, basically what is true is that there was a base level of public infrastructure that he had access to that maybe is in need of update. So for instance, the public libraries
are dying right now. Like
right, and maybe the library is the thing that needs to be salvaged, because there are, as you mentioned, a whole bunch of people who are being underserved. We're already talking about like collapsing community infrastructure that's falling the fuck apart, and there's no obvious replacement for it. And I don't want kids who I don't want an entire generation of kids whose fucking parents get bored of them talking, so they literally just hand them fucking YouTube and then let the algorithm watch like 8 hours of fucking like T-Rex videos like my fucking son does. So basically, like I think there's a certain level of public infrastructure for the public good that needs to be funded. And I think marrying in this indie journalism infrastructure with the public library is pretty smart. Not enough, but good, efficient, probably cost effective. It's local. People have access to it. If you're really smart, you can take it to the 10,000th degree. So people who can't even afford computers, they can join calls like with us and have political debates for 3 hours. And as long as they don't get kicked out for screaming about Boomerside at the local library, they can come and join the conversation. So I think there's a certain level of
based.
I think there's a certain level of public infrastructure that we need to preserve, just so there's the right often talks about equality of opportunity but doesn't provide it. So you have to have that bare bones level of opportunity for people to seize onto.
So
Yeah,
I
it's
would,
liberalism.
I spent, as someone who spent like every day after school in the library, like because I was poor as shit and we didn't have internet at home. So I liked to go to the library and then have like my mom would come pick us up. Like, um, so I would much rather see the funding go to the libraries first. You know, if these are failing, and then like you said, it could be in a 2-in-1. We could combine the two things, and then the library can work. I mean, the newspaper could work out of the library. Like that seems like an excellent idea and a much better like place to start, I guess, for me.
I mean,
Yeah,
not to
I agree with
add
that.
on to what you're saying, Nacho. Not only that, but oftentimes libraries will actually have billboards or like poster boards
Yep.
where they will actually put like what's going on in the community, local news in the community. Like it's not just a place you go to read books. So I mean, I would be completely for funding the libraries instead of funding these newspapers, and have the library be like a local source of information for the community.
Right,
No,
and the reason I bring this up, right, is as I've mentioned before, right, my research specialty is information exchange in rural communities. So another way that you could kind of help build out these programs and kind of ensure that they're profitable, right, is do local business lectures, right? So we always talk about how do we spawn rural business when it's being killed by all these large corporations that are coming into rural areas, right? You could use the same kinds of systems, right? Advertise them at local farmers markets, help people build businesses at their local farmers markets so they can then expand into other local areas and start their own businesses to kind of push back against these like, you know, big corporations that are kind of infecting their communities. B, respond to the needs of the communities in terms of A, what goods they need, and B, what kinds of services they want to provide. And C, right, charge a small fee for the class that gets circulated back into the system to fund it. Right? It seems like a really great program. These kinds of programs have been very successful when we've implemented them in central Pennsylvania, right? So this kind of stuff can work, and people do have a demand for it.
I like the idea of changing, of thinking outside the box for distributing news, but, and maybe I missed it before, which is a definite possibility. And we definitely need like newsrooms, right? That needs to be a thing, right? Scattering these people to the wind, right? I mean, there's something one working together on people with stories. That's one thing, right? But to having a well-funded journalist to do like the very, very hard work of like digging through like governmental files, right? And seeing or large, very complicated bills and understanding how these things relate, and then interconnecting that back to like an existing policy. All of that takes a lot of work, a lot of expertise. You're not gonna get it on your fucking Facebook feed, right? Or if you do, right, and if it's for free, then I wouldn't rely on it. I honestly wouldn't.
Yeah, Prime, I agree with that. I just don't know why you need a newsroom to do all that, and you can't have everybody work remotely. Working remotely is great for workers, and it would make the business more
Or
efficient, and you could allocate
corporation.
more funding, and you could allocate more funding into the things that you want aside from that too.
Well, first of all, if we're talking, okay, so if we're talking about like funding the newsroom governmentally, right? Like we can fund them however much we want to fund them. Like it would be infinitesimal, especially compared to what we get out of it, right? So I'm not concerned about the amount of dollars that would go into this program one way or the other. But on the other side of it, when there is something to working collaboratively with people within an audience, right? Sitting down, putting down, like, say, one of these complicated bills in front of you, and just working these things out together. Now, we should always have the option for remote working if that's a possibility, especially for our disabled brothers and sisters, right? Like, we want to give them as many options so they can be involved as well. But on the other side of it, there is a thing. There is utility to being together, and one way or the other, whether you're together or not, to paying journalists like for their expertise in doing the things that they do.
I agree, but you can do that on Zoom.
But you could still have decentralized newsrooms, for example, which is what I was suggesting earlier in terms of local resource centers
Connor's
dedicated to journalism that are funded through independent journalist grants. Like, I do think that this is a multifaceted, multi-solution problem.
I think so too. Don't worry, Connor, I'm going to get to you. But I agree with that, and I'm not disagreeing that people can work on Zoom, but like I'm just saying that like there has to be an option like of having an office. Like office space is still a thing, right? That still has value. Like the office is not an anarchistic space, right? Like it's like working together physically with people. There's a different dynamic to that. Yes, you can do a lot of things together remotely, right? But
Co-work spaces have been very successful for this. Kind of like having like people working from different fields in small groups in the same kinds of like open form factor workspaces, which again is something that you can implement in like either through research centers or resource centers or local libraries. So I think you're right. There is definitely something guarded from that. Research does show it. This is why in-person classes tend to work better for some people than at-home classes, for example. That kind of person-to-person connection, and also interacting with people who think differently than you.
exactly.
Holy
There is
shit.
well, okay. Yes.
No, you guys are just about to make me mentally coom. That's all.
Good. Go ahead. You want Connor? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, because you guys have been like right on the tip of the tongue. So this has been like intellectual blue balls for the past like 2 minutes. So basically what's going on is so again, I live in Central Florida. Don't come after me. I will hurt you. But basically, I will defend myself. And I also have a fierce dog. I don't know if you guys can see all 30 pounds of his itchy ass in the background, but he will eat you as well. And I'm probably gonna need him in a second, but he's fucking deaf. So it didn't work. See, he's deaf. No, but so the downtown Orlando library, actually, because they're dealing with the same problem that everybody has been talking about, basically funding, libraries aren't as relevant as they used to be. Print media is kind of dying. A lot of people are going digital. A lot of kids are being electronically entertained. What they did in order to balance this, as soon as Empress was talking about basically creating like one-touch recording, my alarm bells were going off, because they created digital studios. They created professional level digital studios. These digital studios are available for rent. They created basically like conference rooms. That way people could conduct conferences. They basically have professional level spaces that are available for rent for free. You literally just sign up on the fucking timesheet. Yeah, like
rent for free? I'm just a little confused.
You can lease the space. You can reserve the space. You can reserve the space for however many hours you want, and as long as the slots aren't available, like obviously they're going to break up like supply and demand. But at the same time, everything that you guys were just talking about, collaborative spaces for research, access to municipal documentation through like I'm sure a librarian would be the first person who could tell you how to do research. Basically access to high-speed internet, access to a digital webcam, access to a professional level digital recording studio. I joke about it because I haven't monetized any of my YouTube or Twitch stuff. I have made negative $800 doing YouTube and Twitch because I haven't monetized anything and I invested in the technology. I understand that's a barrier to entry, but if you have the ability to catch the bus or catch a ride to the library, this world is not necessarily denied to you. And I think that we kind of need to follow the Zoomers a little bit because they're purely online. We don't need to fight to preserve print media. We need to fight to make Zoomers more intelligent in the way they produce and consume digital media.
Well, I kind of hope you've got yourself set up as a business.
Boomers are going to die anyway.
Losses, because carry forward losses, you can write off those in tax in the future. Get that $800 back. Work the tax system for you, baby.
And just another.
Did Eminem just join the chat? I mean,
that's what I was saying.
The chat?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying in my intro when I was talking about like giving tax breaks to like people who want to do this shit, right? Like you could do that for independent journalists and small companies and all that shit. And Connor, you could work the fuck out of that and get that money back.
So we could
we'll see.
We'll
see.
Go to Revolt but one thing I know Revolt will also agree with, right?
You can go file those taxes at your local
when
library.
You break up spaces, right? It also makes it difficult to unionize, which I'm not about, right? So physical spaces always, if possible, an option to do things remotely. But that doesn't mean physical spaces don't have their myriad of uses. But go ahead, Revolt.
Yeah, I mean that is a huge part of it, actually, unionization. But there's a lot of issues that need to be tackled like on a team level, and like there's no replacement for the like in-person collaboration that's necessary to do like a lot of the investigative journalism that like we would like to see tackled. A couple of things that have come up along the way that I just made little notes of that I wanted to talk about too is like it's possible, it's very easy actually to have a configuration where like the government is funding these organizations but has no say or control or influence over like them whatsoever. So that's one thing. There's been a couple of proposals put out there as far as things like, Yang had his democracy dollars or whatever, like everybody would get a certain amount of money out of their taxes that would be allocated to donate to candidates. They're talking about doing the same thing or a similar bill that would allow people $250 a year to donate or to, subscribe to local newspapers and try to fund them that way. So that's one interesting thing that I'd put out there. But like, I think that we kind of have like skirted around the idea of like having a bunch of individual journalists doesn't allow for an institution to accumulate like necessarily like the clout and the the authority that like we would want these kind of organizations to have. So like I think that getting rid of the centralization, like the actual like going into work at a newspaper, is like detrimental for that reason. And it's also detrimental because we want people who are educated journalists. We want the people to go to 4-year school, and like nobody's going to do that and like and pursue the education necessary in order to be a competent journalist if they don't know that they're going to have a job. If it's going to be this kind of like, well, hopefully we can get a grant, and like maybe like under a Republican there won't be as many grants, and under a Democrat there'll be more grants, and like we don't want that. We want to provide consistent, like compensation for quality work. And like that way people are motivated to get into this industry in the first place and then do a good job of it. Yeah, that's it for now.
Is there anyone else wants to, because we can move on to the next. Oh, we go ahead, Nacho.
Yeah, just to touch on like the spreading it out makes it harder to unionize. I mean, I wouldn't say that that's necessarily the case because it's anecdote, but my brother is he's a musician, and he joined a union for musicians who play gigs and whatever else. Like I can't remember what the name of it is, but he joined that union in Hawaii, and then eventually was moved to like Florida, and then up to the Carolinas, and then eventually to New York City. And he always had work. They helped him get work, and decent pay like throughout. So for gigging around. So I mean, I don't know, like especially musicians that travel all over. If they can do it, I feel like we could find a way to do it for this. It wouldn't be easy, but I'm sure it wasn't easy for them either.
Sure, not that it's a barrier that can't be overcome, but it's a barrier, and like let's not put up more barriers to unionization. We have enough of those things already. But okay, so we can move on to our next one. All right, so we know last anything else to say. All right, so we'll move on to the next one. In which again you would think I have it ready. I don't. All right, anyway, so I wanted to hear Connor's point of view on this one. So we'll have Connor go last, and maybe some forehead bulging going along. The new recruitment ads for the military and CIA have gone viral. They both espouse progressive, inclusive values to appeal to a presumed liberal Zoomer generation. These ads have been widely mocked as both the US military and CIA have been hostile to those very same values. Should anyone who is young and progressive ever join either of these organizations? Can these organizations be changed from the inside, or is their mission statement diametrically opposed to the liberal mindset? If it is in opposition, is that beneficial to accomplishing their task? Okay. So we'll I know Revolt's gonna love this topic. So we'll start with Revolt, and then we'll work our way around and end with Connor. All right. So Revolt.
Where to begin? I think that the actually, can I have 1 second, Prime? Can you guys?
You got this.
Sure. Okay. And Empress walked away too. All right. So we'll go to Akil.
Me? Cool. So I think there's like a really interesting dichotomy here, and like in the US, the military is a gateway to a lot of things. It's a gateway to having like decent healthcare, a gateway to having education, and unfortunately, states probably designed this way. But that being said, can you change, like, if it's like, should you? Well, like, if your situation is such that, like, you need fucking money and an education and stuff, like, and you have no other way of getting a job, then it's a way of getting a job, I guess, right? But with that being said, right, can you change them from the inside out? I think it's like the better question, and it would like really depend. With something like the army, an individual's contribution, I don't know about that. it feels like that's a place that's like really heavily entrenched as it is already, with ways to like combat a lot of stuff. That doesn't seem like. It would depend on how corrupt it is. I don't know. Like you ain't getting up to the top and making decisions about like realistically about how things are run there, right? That's a big organization with a long ladder to climb, right? But it's for like police. If you're like joining like your local police force, you can absolutely make a pretty decent difference there in terms of like how things are run. When you've got like a police station that has like 20, 30 people or whatever, you can absolutely come in there and say, hey, no, it's not okay. This isn't okay. Like, because people will listen to someone. Like, I feel like people really underestimate the amount of effect that you can have just like talking to someone like a normal fucking human being, right? People tend to listen to and respect people they trust and know. So if you talk, like, usually if I'm talking like political issues to my co-workers, right, they'll listen to me. If they listen to me, and I'm not like especially popular at my work, but like if I talk to them about like safety issues, they'll listen to me, right? If I talk to them about things that they probably should or shouldn't do, they'll generally have a pretty good idea to listen to me, because most of them are just like have better shit to do in their lives than worry too hard about certain things, right? Unless you're like really like coming down on them about like the things that they really super value, like their employment, like the actual nature of their employment, and things like that, right? But if you're like saying to a cop, like you're out with a cop and you're in a regional town and they like pull over a dude and is like, hey man, did you really need to pull that guy over? Like, come on. Like, you can even make like differences there. But if you're able to work hard and sort of advance, yeah, even within those small areas, absolutely. The problem is that when you hit like size and scale, like the army, I don't think you really can make much of a difference. But the other side of the coin on the army is that unfortunately in the US, that's a gateway to getting a lot of good things to set you up for like a decent life. So right now, it'd be better to have policy where that isn't the case. Absolutely, but I don't know. You got to, in those situations, you just got to do what's best for you in your life, I guess.
Empress.
So, when I saw the CIA ad in particular, I was pretty offended, because the ad is called, for those of you who haven't seen it, Humans of the CIA, which is a direct reference to someone called Humans of New York. Humans of New York, otherwise known as Brandon Stanton, is a hero of mine. He is the reason I got into photography and videography. It's why I always have such a wonderful camera. I do photography as a hobby. I've done it as a like semi-profession. And I got a chance to meet the man, and he's done interviews with political officials. And they used the same kind of aesthetic and kind of like video or picture with a line under it that he used. And I was like, one, how the fuck is this not copyright infringement? This seems like this is a little bit too on the nose for his style. And B, come on, you can't just ruin my favorite thing like that, man. So it's like, I don't know. I think people are pretty aware of what they're doing. I don't think that these ads are really, except for the fact that, again, they're just constantly shoving it in your face, unless you're already kind of predisposed towards these institutions and already kind of, you know, along those lines, that these ads are really going to push you over the edge, right? I think for most people, they just wind up being offensive and trying to look relatable. That being said, I do actually somewhat disagree with Kyo on terms of individual representation in these organizations. As someone who would like to work in a triple letter agency, you know, it does make a difference in terms of, you know, as you mentioned, talking to your coworkers, and that does in turn have a sort of butterfly effect. But there is so little representation of you know, especially progressive views in these fields, that little representation that does exist matters immensely, because it affects every decision that person's going to make, because there's who else is going to be in that spot, right? It's going to be someone who's just going to smile and nod when they make those decisions. So it's like, on one hand, yeah, you're not necessarily going to have the same kinds of, you know, large wave changes that you might be able to have at a local level, and always local level politics is important. But bureaucratic institutions don't change when people don't go into them.
Nacho.
Yeah, so more from Anecdote Andy tonight, but as someone who comes from a military family with siblings that are currently serving, like, I asked them about this, like, because I knew this was coming up. Like, basically, the feedback was like, nobody really cares. Like, any kind of like bullying or like not getting along or fights or whatever is going to result in you getting like an NJP or you getting in trouble anyways. So like they go through boot camp, they have to be ready to fight a war with these people. So it doesn't matter whether you're trans, you're gay, or whatever. as long as you can do your duty, as long as you can like do your job and function and fight beside these people, like it doesn't really matter. So generally, the feedback has been like nobody really turns their heads. The reason I think we're seeing a shift in the ads is because of the shift in the administration. So and this was based off of like asking how some of this stuff works. Is apparently like the ads basically come based off of like orders from the commanders. So this is just them trying to basically pander to whoever's in the administration to make sure that they have the funding for the next year. Like we give them a number and then they give us this. Therefore, we'll do whatever we need to do with the ads to make sure we can secure the funding for the next year, make it as inclusive as possible. My take is like you should just keep to the generic shit that you usually keep to. Like Kiyosan said, like this is a great way to have healthcare, to have a career after you get out of the army, to be able to like I said, like I come from a pretty poor family. This was our get out of jail free card or whatever. Like this was our ticket out because you could go into the military and you could get your college paid for, and you can have a career after. And I think they should just keep focusing on those things. It's a meritocracy at the end of the day. If you can pass the training, if you can pass all the physical, mental, all the tests that they require, and you make it, then nobody's going to think twice about you, and people generally are going to fight arm in arm with you. So, I mean, that's really my take on it.
Sprout.
I did serve in the Army. So part of this is going to come from prior experiences. I am a veteran of the United States Army. So with that being said, I laughed at these ads. I think these ads is just all it is just virtue signaling. That's literally all this is. It's virtue signaling. When you're in the Army or when you're in a military force, especially in America, you don't see color. You don't see differences. You're going over there to fight a war. And the biggest thing is having your brothers and your sisters back. Especially when you're overseas. I know a lot of people will be like, you talk shit about all the other branches all the time. That's like it's infighting. It's fun for us. I talk crap about Marines all the time. Muscles are required, intelligence not essential. But that's just kind of like more brotherly rivalry than it is anything else. When you're overseas, it turns into one team, one fight. And that's the way it is. And maybe if you're talking about making sure that people are treated correctly in the military, but there's already a push for that. So I'm not saying that there needs to be much change. I just see these ads as virtue signaling and trying to gain respect of a certain side of America and just trying to virtue signal towards them.
Okay. Thank you for that, Sprout. Layman?
Yeah, sure. As far as the ads go, I'm just kind of indifferent. It's just media doing what media does, trying to sell things to as broad a demographic of people as possible, and obviously conforming as liberal values and a liberal society sort of evolve over time. So, it's whether or not it actually has any consequences from within isn't really relevant to what the ad is actually doing. So I'm totally indifferent to it. I don't really give a fuck about the ad. There is work that needs to be done on the inside. So if you're going to have advertisements towards LGBT people and shit and want them to join the military and shit, which they should, it's like Nacho said earlier, it's a really, really great place to find economic opportunities for yourself and to get your leg in the door and all that shit, especially if you're more socioeconomically disadvantaged. But there is still shit that has to be done within the organizations. I don't know what the solutions are, but there are problems that we should be able to agree with. So there's a peer-reviewed study that was done. It's called Prevalence in Military Sexual Trauma and Sexual Orientation Discrimination. And it looks specifically at LGBT people. And there was a survey that the sample was about 200 or so. And participants were LGBT people, and they reported that there was a statistically significant effect when you control for how they were treated in the military versus outside of the military. So people within the military experience more discrimination based off of the fact that they were LGBT compared to when they were not. And the mean effect was 0.05, so it was barely statistically significant, but it was still more so than it was prior. So That's important to address. If you're going to have ads advertising to this group of people to come in, you probably should do the work from the inside first before you put out the virtue signally ads, as Sprouticus alluded to earlier. So yeah, that's my take for now.
Wait a minute. Sorry, the other one, Shadows.
Yeah, so
The
my
other
take
one.
The other one, you heard me. I won't take that back. Shadows.
I mean, one thing, two thing red, thing blue. Anyways, but yeah. So I
Fucker.
basically agree with the end of Layman's statement in the sense that you should do the work from the inside when the work needs to be done. I of course 100% agree with that. I agree with that for any kind of discrimination or systemic issues within an institution, especially in our government. I think our government should, be true to our founding document, which is the idea that all men are created equal under a creator. We should try our best to treat everyone equal, no matter their differences. But I would say that, unlike Layman, I'm not indifferent to the ad. I'm actually very much in favor of it. I think we should always have ads that, let people know, hey, you are welcome in this space. I don't understand exactly I didn't fully understand the first ad. I mean, I guess there's that cinematographer Empress was talking about, so I guess that's there's just references I didn't pick up on. But as for the second ad, I don't really see how people would have a problem with the second ad, which is the calling one. Like, that one was just good. Like, it was about a girl who was raised with lesbian parents and had great female role models. And she's like, I need to do something with my life rather than just be around role models. And she joined the army. Like, I don't see the problem with these ads, or the problem that so many people have when it's like corporations or government institutions, like pandering towards certain groups. Like, it's always confused me. Like, I think shareholder capitalism and woke capitalism are always a good thing, and I think that we should do the same thing with institutions that are nonprofit.
Let's go to Revolt.
Yeah, so I think I'll take a little bit of a different tack than everybody else and say that, like, I don't think that, like, first of all, like, these ads, I don't think are actually trying to recruit anybody. I think they're just trying to like manufacture some consent in the direction of like laundering the image of the agencies that they are like representing. They've got like there's a stream of ideologically already ideologically aligned people that come out of like different universities, and that like the CIA in particular and a bunch of the intelligence community people recruit from, and like have for like decades. And like there's a certain like, brainwashed, I'll say, but like, a type of thinking that is like, America first, America good, and like, believe the story and believe the press release. And like those kind of people are hard to find. And they are not necessarily competing with private industry to get them. Like the people that, like that believe in, what the mission of the CIA is, are, going to sign up to go to the CIA because it's the American thing to do. So I think that's part of it. The other thing to touch on is the idea that like it is not by any means like going to change the CIA if you show up and you have woke opinions about anything. Like, this is an agency, and these are agencies that our federal government that's supposed to oversee them has struggled for years and years and years to keep in line. Like, I mean, so like if anything, the best way to make any kind of change, if you think these things need to be changed, is from like the political top down, like angle. But like short of that, I really don't think that. I think anybody's like completely delusional if they think they're going to show up and change it, like these megalithic industries that have been around, that have hundreds of billions of dollars of machination that continue to plod along in the same direction they've been plodding along for 50 years. I just don't think that you can change that much momentum as an individual.
All right. Last but not least, Counter.
Yeah, fuck. You guys gave me a lot to think about. But I'll try to plot along as best I can. So Should the people join the organization since they're diametrically opposed to these values? Yeah, I think you can have progressive mixed economy capitalism. I think you can basically be illiberal to defend liberal values. I know that seems like a paradox. It's not. I just think that it's probably tougher for a leftist. I don't think that modern American globalist capitalism gives a shit about whether or not people are LGBTQ. I think they do care whether or not you're a leftist and you want to steal all the money from the bourgeois. So they'll kill leftists, but they won't kill trans people, if that makes sense. As far as like it comes to like the interpersonal shit, whether or not you can make an individual difference. A parable popped into my head. It was like a young man walking down the beach. There was a bunch of starfish on the beach, and he was throwing them back into the sea. And an old man walked by, and he said that no matter what you do, there's still going to be hundreds of starfish that are going to wash up on the shore, and they're going to die regardless of what you do. And so it doesn't matter what you do. And the young man basically turned to the old man, and he said it mattered to that one. And then he threw another starfish into the sea, which is basically all to say that there are, especially in the military, especially in law enforcement, probably in the intelligence agencies as well. I think that there are a lot of choices, a lot of moral choices that are being made. So for instance, the United States Air Force literally had like, I can't talk about it because I don't know it, but the Air Force for the drone program literally had a calculation for what the acceptable amount of civilian casualties was during an anti-terrorist drone strike. I don't know what that calculation was, but maybe if there was a progressive person in that room, they could have said, this is a fucked up calculation and we need to modify our fucking calculus when we're thinking about this. So that's my starfish story. Somebody mentioned that competence is more important than immutable demographics. I think Nacho mentioned that. That's really true. Like a lot of people, and I'll get into this in a second. I'm trying to give you guys lots of fuel for the fire. Basically, I don't give a fuck if somebody is LGBTQ or brown or black. I care that they're competent. Are they going to fall apart in a firefight? Are they going to have my back? Are they able to do their job? Are they able to do a job that I am relying on them in order to survive, or other people are relying on them in order to survive? Also, I would say that the military as an institution is a very strong inoculator for racism. I literally went to boot camp and went into military service with neo-Nazis who had like neo-Nazi tattoos. By the time they were halfway through their service, they actually divulged to me, I used to be a Nazi, I can't be a Nazi anymore. I literally love these people more than I love my own siblings. Some of my siblings are pieces of shit. So now I love people who are a completely different race that is totally antithetical to my previous worldview. I now love these people more than I love my own family. So it's a strong inoculator for racism, but I do think that the LGBTQ issue is more complex because there's always going to be a bias against femme people. I was actually thinking about this while you guys were talking. The bias is not necessarily against gay people. The bias isn't necessarily against trans people. The bias is against femme people. Are you weak? Do you have limp wrists? Are you soft? Are you just easily disgusted? Do you not want to do hard work? Are you, there's all these other things. So there were some like butch ass lesbians that everybody loved because they worked their fucking ass off. I didn't meet any trans folk while I was in the military, but I can imagine that if there was a trans dude who was basically like beating me in a deadlift and then was making fun of me because I was born as cis and they had to fucking transition, then they could talk shit to me about the fact that they were weightlifting more than me, and I could talk shit to them about the fact that they were on steroids, and then that's like a fun conversation that I can see like banter developing from. I'll wrap it up in a second. So basically, I think the military might not be as woke as people want them to be, but I think trans inclusionary radical misogyny is actually a quite potential philosophy for the military. So finally, I'll just stress these points really quick and then yield. Believe the story, believe the press release. I'm interested in delving into that because I think serving in these institutions, you're not going to be able to believe the story or the press release. Your eyes are very quickly peeled back on the G.I. Joe ideals that you were raised with versus what the world actually is. So I definitely want to talk about that. And then I think the conservative backlash, because I know I'm not representative of all conservatives, but the conservative backlash is because these are institutions designed for a couple of things. The CIA is designed for gathering intelligence on our enemies. The military is designed to kill. So when you shift the focus of our propaganda from lethality and preparedness to like diversity and inclusion, these are viewed as like lost sum games where instead of focusing on like, do we have the best military? Do we have the best training? Do we have the most hardcore soldiers? Do we have this? Do we have that? Can we kick somebody's ass if we get into a fight? Oh, well, hey, did you check out the girl who was raised by two lesbian parents? Or did you check out, the Hispanic lady with anxiety disorder who makes kill packets to inform like Latin American guerrillas on who to execute next? That kind of seems to get away from the actual job. So I wanted to ask this to Revolt. This is my last point. I understand that you probably have some criticisms of the institutions. I am curious because I see an intelligence agency and the military as necessary functions of a state. I am curious about what you would change about these institutions in your ideal world. Yield.
Before
You can go if you like.
Are we in?
Yeah,
Are we
yeah.
ready to
Yeah,
go? Can we
so-
respond?
so
yeah, so
here
like one thing
is-
I'd like to say, like just as a quick note about the about those institutions, is that while we understand like forcing people to spend time together is a great way to inoculate them against racism, Connor, you're 100% correct. In a lot of places where there just aren't those people around, you do have, and this is like a well-known problem that's being investigated by the federal government. It's like there is a white nationalist problem in a lot of these orgs, like full stop. So that like when you don't have those other racial groups around in those areas to train with, to force them to spend time with, to look after them, then you actually see like white nationalism like fester around these areas.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Do you have like sources for like is this happening in the military? Because I know this happens in like our police force a lot, but I feel like it's probably a lot less in the military. Just because normally when you get like when you go to boot camp, you're going this place. Then when you get to school, you're going this place, and then when you get stationed, you're going this place. So like I think they do a pretty good job
like
of
more or less
mixing.
referring to police there specifically.
Am
but-
I going to be
Yeah,
the
okay.
anecdote Andy for a second here? I actually know someone who was in going to go into the Coast Guard and dropped out because they were getting radicalized into white nationalism. So like they like eventually at some point someone was like, "Hey, you realize what's going on, right? You're not the same person you were when you graduated high school. We graduated high school together." And he kind of had like a complete like 180 because he had been like a leftist before, right? And he'd kind of like fell for all the rhetoric and all the stuff that was happening in the pre-2016 world, and then that slowly radicalized more and more. I also want to just because like I think counterpoint. I don't know if I necessarily agree with it being a femme bias, right? A 2012 Pentagon survey found that approximately 26,000 women and men were sexually assaulted that year alone, and only 3,300 of those cases were reported, right? I could go on many more stats about rape in the military, but it's a very, very common problem. You were absolutely right on that point. Like I think this is probably one of the best examples. I see Sporticus is going to have something to say, so I'm just gonna yield there.
Yeah,
Sprout
it's
and
also
Revolt. Go ahead.
okay. It's also being addressed. Rape in the military is being addressed. You may not see it. It's being addressed. Though
It is being addressed.
It has been addressed and it's still being addressed.
Okay.
Through the army, you see it called SHARP. It's sexual harassment and rape rape program. Anyways, they tell you not to rape people. That's the short and the end of it. But so either way,
Evaluation was that the
counterpoints.
program was vastly ineffective, though.
Yeah.
So counterpoints. You had an argument, kind of in your opening statement, where you said the army isn't woke enough, or the military isn't woke enough. Just by show of hands, I want to know who on this panel thinks that a military force needs to be woke. By show of hands.
Yeah.
I
what does that mean?
don't think it needs to be.
What does I don't know what woke
What do you
means in
mean by
this-
woke?
Yeah.
Socially progressive.
So
What do you mean by social progressive? Isn't like inclusive of like like minority groups? Like, of course, I think everyone would agree that like.
yeah.
Is there anyone
So
who would disagree with that?
so the military is not, and this is something a lot of civilians don't really understand. Is the excuse me, the military is not a equal opportunity employer. The military will and does tell people they cannot serve because they have something as small as ADHD, something as small as anxiety. They will and they do tell people they cannot join the military because of something as simple as that. So it's not an equal opportunity employer.
That's fine.
To Empress's point, where she's talked about Anecdote Andy and someone being brought into white nationalism via the military. I'm really confused on
Coast Guard.
Sorry.
Well, there's also numerous reports of white nationalists at the higher echelon of the military.
As much as I enjoy you correcting me saying military and saying Coast Guard, the Coast Guard is technically part of the military. As much as I enjoy that
the
little
Coast Guard
jab,
specifically has an overrepresentation of this issue. That's why I want to make sure that this is not necessarily reflective of every branch. Different branches have different levels of this issue. Coast Guard in particular is known for being bad with white nationalism.
Keep going.
Okay, so I wasn't in the Coast Guard, so I can't personally attest to that. What I can personally attest to is that in the Army, it's seen as a brotherhood. So I don't know where they would have thought that they were becoming white nationalists. Besides the fact that the military tends to have more of a Republican leaning than a liberal leaning inside the force, and even people who have gone in liberal have come out Republican. I've seen it. Anecdote Andy. But anyways, so I don't know if it's like I'm starting to support Trump more, so therefore I'm becoming more of a white nationalist. That was kind of my question on like becoming a white nationalist. I was kind of looking for more like into that.
So
was another problem that the DoD thinks it's a problem.
You can go to Revolt Rise and then Layman and Connor.
Yeah, as far as white nationalism is concerned, like it's pervasive in all the branches. The Coast Guard has like had a bunch of like high profile incidents where like Coast Guard, like members of the Coast Guard have been caught like either like stealing weapons and planning like attack crowds and like crazy shit. Like, and that's been like a lot more high profile, I guess, in its coverage than some of the stuff that's happened in other branches. But like it's been pervasive for a long time. The FBI, I think, has like reported on this like as early as like 1998, and I think it's been like progressively getting more and more attention. But like there's been very little being done about it. So like as far as not just white nationalism exclusively, but domestic terrorism, I guess, is like the broad brush that they're painting it. Like what I wanted to bring it back to real quick was Connor had left off like and asked me like what I would prescriptively change or what I thought about the idea that like these are necessary institutions for a country to have for our security or for our safety and our national defense. And like the biggest issue is the ultimate like lack of transparency and like the lack of accountability. And I understand that that's like a really fine line to toe between like, we can't disclose, sources and methods, and it's super important. But like at the same time, like there is essentially no oversight over large swaths of the operating force of like the CIA, of the NSA, and of like I mean the FBI is a different situation, but like like the military in general like is allowed to do things because of the the cover of secretive missions, especially special forces, and like I say that both literally in Green Berets, but also like the Dev Group CIA like adjacent stuff that like we've got like assassination type programs going on all over the world, and like it's been like pretty consistent throughout our history, and I just don't feel like there's any civilian oversight over that stuff, and that's like against it's against the Constitution. It's against the intent. And so I think that like we can accomplish both like security and safety and also have like some kind of civilian oversight and accountability for these organizations.
Okay. Layman, Connor.
Yeah, sure. So Spraticus, I think that you wanted like it sounded like you weren't impressed with the whole anecdote that Empress brought up, which is fair because I wouldn't want to believe anything based off of an anecdotal thing that someone told me if someone told me there was white supremacy in the military. So there's a couple links in the side chat. I put them in the Discord chat too. A lot of polling data that indicates that when you survey a lot of people in the military, like they do self-report experiences with white supremacists. And I mean, you can go with the colloquial definition of white supremacist, because I don't think that people in the military are reading like intersectional theory and shit and have some like weird niche academic definition of white supremacist. So, you can just take that on face value. It seems like there's it's not like most people in the military are white supremacists, but it seems like a significant minority of them are. It's like I think the polls said like 34% or something like that, and it seemed to track like a few different polls in those articles there, where it seemed like it didn't really go unchanged over a larger span of time. Yeah, go for it, bud.
I'm sorry. I don't want to I don't want to interrupt you. But I did notice something that was interesting in the link, because I was reading the links when you posted them. To the last link in the private chat, it says about 22% of service members who participated in the survey last fall said they've seen signs of white nationalism, racist ideology within the armed forces. I don't necessarily see that as a lie. What I see that I don't see that as like false reporting or anything. What I see that as is people who have been in the military who say, yes, I did meet someone who was racist, and they changed. That would still be seen signs of white nationalism or racism in the armed forces. So I guess the question is, like, I want to know more information, like where did you see this racism? Was it in boot camp? Like, it's very vague, and again, anecdote Andy, but it's very vague, and it's hard for me as someone who's been in there and seen how together the military is when we fight as one force, to see that there's like an overarching issue with this. I think there's an issue with certain individuals, but I don't think it's on a mass scale whatsoever.
Yeah. So I don't think that there's anything like, I don't think that there's anything about being racist or being a white supremacist that means that like you couldn't work with other military men to do the job that you need to do. Technically speaking, you could still do your job every day, but still be on an individual level like a white supremacist.
Well, I would just say, like in regards to like the topic, this is kind of irrelevant anyways, because at the end of the day, it's like about
what Sproutacus said earlier. Yeah, sorry. This topic was about like LGBT people, right?
Right. And about the ads and all that other stuff, and it's like, again, it's like if the ads aren't going to solve this shit. So really, at the end of the day, you should be focusing on these problems, investigating this stuff, and fixing this stuff from the inside out. Because the ads showing somebody that you can identify with isn't going to change the fact that when you get in there, you could come across this shit. You know what I mean?
And that's why I don't like, and that's why I have more of a, I know I said it was neutral, but I do have a more antipathy towards ads where they're advertising, hey, we're LGBT friendly, but like then you get the fuck in there and they're like, oh, fuck you, and they call you the F slur and the T slur or whatever fucking slur you want to throw out there, right? So, but I think they can solve this by allowing people to just have more access into the military. That like trans people can join the military now and shit. Again, as long as they meet the qualifiers that Sprouticus said earlier.
That reminds me, earlier counterpoints mentioned that, and since it's being mentioned again, I feel like we should clarify something. People who are on HRT are not allowed to join the military, right? So you wouldn't meet a trans man in the military who's on testosterone. That wouldn't exist. The way that you serve is you serve in the capacity of your birth sex. So if you are a trans man, you will serve with women, and if you are a trans woman, you will serve with men. And you are not allowed to do hormones, and you can't have clinically significant gender dysphoria. This is what we mean when we say same requirements, just to be clear.
Is that like period point blank, or is it like once you get in, then you could like take hormones, or like?
Well, no, because if you start taking hormones in the military, and actually if you decide that you want to transition, it would take, and here's the logistics behind it. It would take you out of the battlefield for too long. And also the hormones are in order to take medication in the military, it has to be readily available, has to have a good shelf life. But if you develop there, it's really weird. I don't really want to delve into how medicine works in the military, because it can work the other way too, to where I've seen if someone got diabetes while they were in the military and they weren't kicked out, instead they were just given insulin. And so we could debate that back and forth, but that's kind of going down a different.
It's unclear right now for hormones, at least from the research.
Okay, I want to move away from this topic because I want to get back to the thing.
Back to
finish your point. Then we'll go to Connor.
Okay, well, I was going to actually go straight back to the question. So back to the question that was at hand. I think it's fine for the military to virtue signal. Like Nacho said at the very beginning, I think it's just based on the commander. You're going to see ads differ between who the commander in chief is. And that's essentially why you're seeing ads differs, because we have a different commander in chief.
Go ahead, Connor.
Yeah, so everybody's giving me like a lot of fuel to my fire, and I feel like this is all related. So what I mean by that is I'm going to address some of the points that some of y'all said. But I feel like you can't talk about advertising and recruiting and the ethics of advertising and recruiting to, I don't know, marginalized groups without talking about the experiences of those groups actually within the military. I feel like these subjects are very closely linked. So sharp training, bear in mind, I was in literally 11 years ago. But I very much doubt the culture has changed a lot since then. So I would assume that sharp training, I bet sharp training is as mocked now as it was then. Because let's face it, a lot of people in the military are macho. They're a little toxically masculine. They like to get laid. They like to drink alcohol. They like to smoke cigarettes. They like to be assholes. They like to fight. They're douchebags. And I love it because I was a douchebag too. So basically, like, no, sharp isn't going to solve this, but also what we're talking about, this is kind of the thing where we're talking about like lethality and preparedness versus inclusion. Basically it's like, what kind of people fight wars? What kind of people like volunteer to fly 7,000 miles to a fucking dust cloud to fucking have sand grains up their fucking assholes for fucking a year and a half while their girlfriend cheats on them in order to fucking shoot people and watch their friends die? It's mostly assholes. I say that with all the respect in the world because my best friends are assholes and I'm an asshole too. To kind of direct this on the nose though, Sprouticus, you were talking about like, well, maybe the white nationalism was kind of dealt with through the recruiting process and all that kind of stuff. I know for a fact, I was stationed on Pendleton, which is one of the largest Marine Corps bases. We had gang problems after boot camp. So basically what happened was there was a brief period of inoculation, but when you end up on a large base, there were Crips, Bloods, and Aryan Brotherhood that all picked football team flags, and they would literally fly them on their cars. They found a half dozen other people who were still active gang members, and they would still commit crimes because they weren't in there for the military institution. They were there to learn how to be better violent people and still be career criminals. So this thing still happens. Another thing that I thought that was interesting, I know everybody likes to focus on white nationalism and white supremacy, but white nationalism and white supremacy means a lot of people to a lot of different things, or means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So I was kind of a racist dude back then. I said racist shit. I liked my fucking edgy jokes. Lots of my friends like fucking edgy jokes. Was I a white supremacist? Was I a white nationalist? Was I fucking, a part of this statistic because I made fun of my Jewish friend because he was very fickle with his money? Was that his experience with fucking white supremacy? I have no fucking idea. But I would say that there's probably a reporting issue there where me making fun of my Jewish friend would probably end up on that survey, despite him and I loving each other. So what I would also say, this is my final point because I could literally talk for another 20 minutes. Actually, no, I need 2 points. So here's the other point, is a lot of military members, a lot of security forces, a lot of us signed up because we're constitutional conservatives. We believe in America. We believe in the Constitution. We believe in the ideology. So to have Joseph R. Biden say that you should, like, if you're fucking home invaded, you should fire 2 shotgun blasts into the fucking air or shoot out your door. And, for Beto O'Rourke to say, hell yes, we're going to take your assault weapons. That basically identifies him as an ideological enemy on a fucking scale that I don't feel comfortable articulating to you. So there are people who are our government officials that I would probably have what would be called anti-government extremist sympathies. A lot of people in the military, despite being members of the federal government, are anti-government extremists. And ironically, that's because they believe in the Constitution and the history of the United States of America. Final point. When it comes to boot camp, one of the things that I laughed about because Don't Ask, Don't Tell got repealed as I was getting out of service is I was like, well, what are they going to call us in boot camp? Because they just called us the F slur the whole time. And so basically, like, my point with that being that there is a certain amount of cultural communication that probably could be skipped without slurs, but still needs to be communicated that you need to be tough, you need to be strong, you need to be fast, you need to be lethal, you need to be deadly, you need to do this, you need to do that. And if you're not these things, then you can go fuck yourself. And if you are these things, then you're awesome. And I think that's really complicated when you bring in the liberal progressive worldview, and I'll leave it there.
Connor.
So, hold on.
Yeah, please respond.
This thing that you brought up about this survey, it's like, oh, well, you don't know what it's capturing, right? It's like, oh, I'm just joking with my Jewish friend, and we're so
I said some horrific shit to my Jewish friend.
Wait, man. I don't. I sure okay, and I don't disagree that maybe you guys were close or whatever. But I remember in college, um, there was I was in a group and there was a lot of white people on my floor, and my white friend, right, we would interact with an individual there who was Jewish. He Okay. Anyway, he liked to call. He liked when people call him KJ. Right. That was his name that we gave him. King Jew. Right. When I found this out, I had to go to him like, "Are you sure this is okay? Are you positive?" And he was like, "Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. It's fine." Right. So like we regularly interact with this person, but the white guys also like not only call him King Jew, also started making jokes about being Jewish with him. Well, then, in 1 year, there was a new student on the floor, and they were apparently also of Jewish descent, and they left almost immediately. Right? They requested a transfer because they felt unsafe. Right? And when we found out about this, right, that this happened, well, then the white guys who have been making all those jokes about Jews, right, got super fucking offended. Like, how dare you? Like, obviously we were joking, right? No, I mean, like it's so weird. Why would you even think that, right? Like, I've just said a bunch of terrible things about Jews this entire time, right? But like, why would you ever think that? Like them getting offended because he got offended. Amazing. So, like, I'm just saying that these individuals who are reporting dealing with white national sentiments, right? They might be reporting very real things, right? And even in that case, if they were your bunk mate, I don't know, whatever, within your barracks,
Regiment,
right? Yeah,
within your regiment.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And they heard you saying those things to your good friend, which I believe was your good friend, right? That doesn't mean they wouldn't feel unsafe. It wouldn't be right to feel unsafe.
Oh, you don't want to know what my black friends and I said to each other.
So like,
I know we don't. No one wants to know.
I mean,
Okay.
so the back.
It wasn't
great. So to back counter up a little bit, just a tad bit, and to kind of go to PrimeCayes' point, I understand where you're. I really do understand where you're coming from, Prime. That someone can listen to a joke and then take it personally on their side, and that does get reported a lot. I think that's a lot of what gets reported is someone overhearing a joke that was between two people, and the third person got offended. Third party got offended when it was overheard. But it does. I mean, I'm not gonna say it doesn't happen in the military. It does happen in the military a lot. And if that's what we're talking about, then maybe that's a different discussion.
Okay, layman. And
so
then
like what the government said was like
layman. Then I said layman before.
Okay,
I said layman. Then you.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to. Oh God, I hope I fucking remember what I was going to say now. But Connor was talking about his banter with the boys in the military, right?
A little bit of bants.
A little bit of bants, which is fine by me. I'm not opposed to bants. I think that this is tying to what I was kind of saying before about like, okay, so if you, I'm sure some people on this panel might be familiar with contact theory, or some people in the chat might be, but basically like the more that you're around a diverse range of groups of people, the more those groups of people tend to have a sort of have this social cohesion with each other. And I think that if you had more of that in the military, then the banter that Connor is participating in, where he has these sort of mutual relationships with these other, you could say like minority groups, or groups that we would regard as like people who are typically like disadvantaged groups. If you had more of these people in there, there might be more of a sort of normalization, more social cohesion, and more mutual understanding that these kinds of jokes, when they are mutually agreed upon with each other, because again, there'd be more social cohesion as per the theory, because it's a well-substantiated theory in sociology, you would see maybe less of these reports over time, because less people would be offended by this shit, because, well, I'm not saying like always, right? But like I'm saying that this would be less prevalent if you had like more diversity in
Oh.
these
Oh,
military.
Prime, yes.
No.
Yes,
Yes.
literally true.
Because you've accepted a premise which I don't accept. I was simply addressing the one thing, but I don't accept the premise that these reports are simply due to people overhearing jokes, right? Oh, that's all it is. No, there's a fucking nationalist there, right? So
I'm not saying
seems
that's
like
I'm not saying.
So
I
I'm just saying
want to
that
clarify that because I'm not saying they're not.
I'm saying that Connor and Sprout seem to be pushing minimizing this, saying, "Oh, well, it's these jokes, right?" I'm saying it's not just jokes, right? These people experience like real shit, right? Going through these
I agree
so
with
like
you. I agree with you.
and as a person not in the military, right? Just being in civilian life, yes, that's another thing that happened. You can say, "Oh, well, they're just jokes," but I get a lot of white guys who tell me, "Oh, they're just jokes," right?
No,
I
you're
get a lot of
right.
white guys on the internet telling me, "Oh, they're just jokes."
You're right.
So like,
You're right. I agree with you. I'm saying that because the data, I cited the data. I'm confident in the data. I agree that the data is reflecting an actual issue with actual white supremacists in the military. What I'm saying is that because all we have is the self-reports. It is possible that some of those numbers are that. I don't think it's most of it at all. Okay, I think there's legitimacy to the claims that there's a problem with white supremacy in the military, 100%. But I'm saying that you can minimize that by just having more of these groups in there.
Prime.
So let's
That's
go.
all. Let's go,
Kill.
and I would
just
riffing off
we've been waiting.
So one thing I would note is that like if we're talking about like a group like the military, as it was noted earlier on in this discussion, is that the military is primarily like center right at best to like further right at worst, right? That you've got a specific group of people that would join the military, and that these are usually Republican, right? So what you have is a group of respondents who are probably going to have a higher tolerance for what they would consider like white supremacy. The fact that you've got a group of right-wing leaning people saying that in 34% of their experiences, they've encountered white supremacy. They're more than likely not referring to like people joking. They're more than likely actually referring to what they would probably consider something akin to a Nazi, right? Like, not like, oh, they said some like, oh, this would infer white supremacy, or like this person's like joking with the boys. Like most of these people are going to understand already by being in that environment. Like Connor mentioned before, this is a common thing to happen in that environment. But by being around these people, that when they make that claim, when they ask, say, have I been in contact with the with white supremacy, they're going to say yes. Now, to Spartacus's point, I think that's actually a pretty reasonable response to what you said. Is like, did they change their mind? And that's a reasonable response to that survey data. But the DoD's report would indicate that it's something that's alive and well and has actually infected itself among the upper echelons, among the military. That this is like a real problem to be concerned about, even outside of the survey data. Sorry, go on, Connor.
Yeah, so Prime, I want to address this because the whole reason why I brought up active gangs in the military in the first place is to indicate that there's actual serious shit going on. I don't say that Aryan Brotherhood is operating within the military lightly. I think that's fucking true. But at the same time, what I am saying is that so I heavily agree with Layman's assessment of fucking contact theory. As a matter of fact, I think it's the way forward. I don't think all right, here's my hot take. My hot take is not 100 years from now, fucking your grandchildren and my grandchildren are having a conversation and then they're talking about like fucking Martin Luther King Jr. and then fucking like my kid says something offensive and then your kid says something, oh, that hurt my fucking feelings. My fucking game plan is my kid says something fucking shitty and then your kid comes up with an even bigger fucking immutable characteristic fucking burn and fucking roasts his ass to his face. And then both of them fucking laugh, buy each other fucking beer, and fucking make moves. So that's what I want 100 fucking years from now. And I see you shaking your head no. But at the same time, what that would indicate is an equalization of the power dynamic. And here's the thing. I'm almost done. I'm almost fucking done. So basically what you have in the military, I think this is actually a perfect example. So Full Metal Jacket is one of the best war movies that's ever made. I'm reviewing it on my channel. There's a whole bunch of racist fucking shit in that movie. Literally, like some of the most racist shit that you've ever heard uttered in a fucking film is in that movie. And yet those characters, because of the circumstances that they're in, because of the dynamics that they're in, they do kill and die for each other in that movie, despite these like vast gulfs in fucking racial relationships. I see you're not happy with this, but
So Sprout,
I'm willing to defend it.
so Sprout, go, and then I'll respond to both of your wrong points. Go ahead.
Okay. If you do if you took my last statement as we don't have problems in the military, we definitely have problems in the military. When you teach a large amount of people how to kill and how to be lethal and how to put yourself in that mindset, it's going to come with problems. And that's just the nature of the beast. When you teach people how to kill and how to put themselves in that mindset. And if you don't think we have a problem with the military, please take a closer look at Fort Hood and tell me there's not a problem in the Army. So I mean that was just my 2 cents there.
Okay. So this is, well, Connor, you brought another thing that I have a problem with where this whole conversation has been going. Focusing on these individual experiences, right? When we're talking about like the CIA and military's values as a whole, right? So, yes, I'm sure if you hold racial and the homosexual views, right, of the military now compared to 20, 40, 60 years ago, right, you would see a vast improvement because we have more of those people. Great, wonderful. I'm excited, right? And there is value to that, so I don't want to be dismissive. There is value to that. But on the other side, there is like such a thing as institutional inertia, right? The way that institutions operate before is a good predictor of how they operate in the future, unless some massive change happens, right? Oftentimes structural, right? There are incentives that drive the institutions to act the way they do act, right? We see this in policing. We talk about this all the time in our justice system, right? That like it's not that the individual actors are racist, right? It's simply that, or whatever. It's simply that they have incentives that drive them to act in manners that disproportionately negatively affect minorities and trans individuals and whatnot, right? So like all of that exists in the military as well. So saying that, oh yeah, we'll just add a more diverse set, right? Like what these commercials are trying to do, right? Doesn't necessarily solve any of this, right? And so I don't believe you, Connor, that there will be this future, right? This future you're talking about, this post-racial future without those massive structural changes, which is what we're missing here, right? Like talking about, and that was part of the question. The part of the question was like, are these values even compatible with the military and CIA as they are currently constituted? So you can respond, Connor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I missed that too. If I can reiterate just what the question was, can these organizations be changed from the inside, or is their mission statement diametrically opposed to the liberal mindset? If in opposition, is that beneficial to accomplishing the text? Okay, yeah, I missed that part, and I was like focused on the ads for a while. That's why I've been talking.
Go ahead, Connor.
Yeah.
And then Revolt.
Yeah. So you bring up a really important point, and I think that, for instance, Sprouticus was bringing up all these objections that we have to trans people being in the military, right? And I think that those objections are very real. They're the same questions that I had when I first even learned of the existence of trans people, when I heard that they wanted to be in the military, like et cetera, et cetera. It's like, dude, how the fuck are you going to get HRT on the battlefield? If you're deployed for fucking 7 months at a time and during an invasion, you're fucking wiping your pussy with fucking baby wipes, you can't even take a shower for fucking 60 days. What's it like if you're trying to get necessary medication to continue transition? But then I think there's a lot of really strong arguments, and the devil is in the details. Sprouticus brought up, there are diabetics who got diabetes after they were in the military, and they continue to serve because they're receiving insulin. Now, they are probably taken off of the front line. They're not allowed to serve as infantry. So they're basically their medical conditions that would preclude them from being hyper efficient in ultra, the pinnacle, the infantry setting is not necessarily a problem in the rear with the gear. And then, so you can make these structural changes like, hey, no, you have to take trans people. They're non-combat MOS. As a matter of fact, they can't even be in artillery. They can't be in motor T. They can't be in these long form deployed MOSs, but they can transition and they can serve if they're in a non-combat role, basically in the rear with the gear, where they would have access to the medication that they need in order to transition. And that would change it. So going back to contact theory with laymen, no offense, but there was a lot of gay people who were docs. So basically medical personnel who worked with the Marines. I could very easily see basically trans people falling into that role as well, where they are loved and respected members of the community, because guess what? When you're fucked up, the person who's fixing you is a doc. So if there's a fucking trans gal or a gay person, you're not fucking thinking about that shit. You're basically like, hey, fix me, I'm fucked up. So I know you don't buy into contact theory yet. It's fine. But here's something that I think you're. Well, hold on. I have one more point that I think it'll address your point. So you were asking, like, without massive structural changes, can liberal values be emphasized in these institutions? I think on an internal level, yes, they can. You can incorporate all sorts of people into the military and intelligence infrastructure. On an external level, I think you can't, because you have to identify an enemy, you have to identify why they're bad, you have to identify why you're going to kill them, and then you have to kill them. So there's like a propagandistic element here where you can have like internal liberal progressive values, but for the external, you have to identify why an enemy is bad and then basically be ready to kill them. So I'll leave it there.
I revolt.
There we go. I just wanted to point out there's a fair bit of irony in Connor's prescription, and also his citation of a Full Metal Jacket. Like in Full Metal Jacket, there's a guy who's got a mental handicap that's obvious, and that's supposed to be a commentary on the fact that we had like what was literally called McNamara's morons, and it was because they lowered the IQ standard for allowing people into the military as they were running out of people voluntarily signing up to go to fight in Vietnam. And so they took somebody who had a mental handicap and hazed him into the point that he committed suicide, as part of the movie. And it's one of the integral parts. And I think that that's probably a much more literal and descriptive analysis of what it's like to be in the military. If you are not you know what I mean? Conforming in all ways. And I just think that is kind of funny that we glossed right over that part.
Yeah, so I mean, if I can address that, yeah. So this is absolutely true, and this is something that Sprouticus and I have said, and I think Nacho alluded to a little bit. So basically, there is a standard. There's a standard of competence that has to be adhered to. If you meet that standard, we will kill and die for you. If you don't meet that standard, we will bully you out of existence, literally, to the point of basically being discharged from service, being fucking committing suicide, becoming an alcoholic, all that kind of shit. It is a very tribal culture. So that's kind of where I'm just gonna, call a spade a spade. You're absolutely right. If you can't fit into this mold of expectation, then you will be destroyed. Yeah, absolutely. It's just true.
So
yeah, and to be fair, there's a lot of other there's mental illnesses. There's, like you said, being diabetic. There's so many other things that keep you. I mean, I had an extensive surgery on my ankle in high school. I have 8 titanium pins and a titanium rod. That was enough to keep me out. I'm damaged goods. It's not worth the risk of me injuring myself in boot camp or whatever else. Even though I'd sign whatever fucking waiver they handed me at this point, because the rest of my family is military, and that's that was my plan, you know what I mean? So it's there are so many other things that keep you out, and I think this is this has to be and has to remain the ultimate meritocracy, because we've all touched on, you have to be willing to die with your brothers and sisters in arms out there. So you want the cream of the crop, and you want everybody to be able to function. But to be fair, Counterpoint's brought up a really good point. If you're saying yes, we have to we have to have, maybe even, it doesn't even have to be just for trans people, because there's a lot of people that are left behind as a result of not being able or not, it's classified as a mental illness, the dysphoria, body dysphoria, whatever it is. So maybe there should be a section. They should have a limit of these are all the people we have this many number of people we can allow in for a non-active duty MOS. Every year we allow this amount.
Sorry, we keep moving away
I think
from
that would be a good place to start.
From the actual point. Yeah. It's not
but the question is can these organizations be changed from the inside? I think absolutely they can be changed.
Okay. All right.
By stuff
how would that work? Is it just
what I was just hinting at?
I'm trying to ask you, is it just letting in
well,
trans individuals? Or?
Right. Well, no. I would expound it beyond like trans people because it should be more inclusive to every. Like, I mean, even people who have more severe mental illnesses. Like, you could find a place for everybody to participate in the
Being
military
trans
if
is
they
not a
want
mental
to,
illness,
because
for the
you
record.
want
Gender dysphoria is. Even the military
well-
recognizes this difference. Not all trans
Right,
people
yeah,
have gender
I wasn't trying
dysphoria.
to say
Not
that,
all
so-
people with gender dysphoria are trans.
That's what
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I was just trying to say like whatever they classify it as, like whatever their reasoning is for like keeping you out. You know what I mean? Like there should
If I
be
can
a
remark a little,
So to
there
back
could
on
be
the
a
core
select.
topic.
give me a second.
Well, I
To
know,
back-
but he was asking like how it would work. I was just trying to finish up on that point. Like
Steelman-
I
Steelman not-
Let Nacho finish his point, and then you can still man it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think if we had like a select group of people, like, or not even group of people, just like a select number of like, we're gonna allow people with whatever, you know, to be integrated into the military, because in spite of whatever their illnesses or whatever things that would normally keep them off the front lines, they still want to participate in the military. I think they should be allowed to participate somewhere. I think we could find them a place to participate. You know what I mean?
You can still man his point. Then let's go to Empress.
Okay. So to steal Man Nacho's point on that, I know several people who got denied the ability to serve simply on the only fact that they were allergic to peanuts. That was the one and only fact that made them not able to serve in the United States military.
Okay.
ADHD is a new one too.
So okay, help me out, Empress, on this actual structural change, because I don't think anything has been said so far.
I mean, I actually wrote not necessarily on trans representation in the military specifically, but any legal recognition of trans identity within legal systems, right? And I was trying to do an analysis and see if this had a correlation with conflict, because there's theories of human rights and women's rights in relation to conflict theory. Basically, nations that have high levels of women's rights and human rights generally tend to not engage in conflict with each other. Countries that don't have these things tend to engage in conflict with one another. But there were some glaring exceptions in these theories, countries like the United States, right? So I was like, okay, what can we do with this? And what I found was that rather than legal recognition, right, cultural acceptance of trans identity, right, particularly within institutions, tended to have a significant correlation with lower propensity towards conflict, right? So in a vague way, like contact theory is one way that it can cause institutional change, right? But I also think that with diverse gender representation also comes kind of, for a lack of a better way to put it, a demasculization of some of these institutions in some ways that ends up resulting in, I'm being serious. I
know you are.
So in some ways could lead to a lower propensity towards conflict, because we know that our military industrial complex has a massive impact on the decision has a massive impact on the military decisions we make. Like, was it Eisenhower warned us against this? I say this all the time in his closing speech, right? Like, this is something that we know has an undue influence on our political processes with relation to conflict. Internal cultural change through introduction of gender diverse people is important.
Okay. All right. So I felt like Connor did the best job of this previously, but all right. Well, let's go back to Connor. I also do want to get other people's opinions on this.
Yeah, no, and I'll try to I'll try to read the prompt again to see if I can answer it even better. Shit. I just clicked on it, so now it's fucking loading. Give me a second. All right, so just to address Nacho's point really quickly, quota for participants, I actually don't agree with at all. I don't think that there should be a quota for people who don't meet the standard. But what I do think is that you could have two different categories of participants in the military. Not every single person is combat arms. Not every single person is front line. Not every single person does hardcore shit. So for instance, I was in the Marine Corps. It's a hardcore fucking branch. They kicked the ever living piss out of me. But at the end of the day, I was basically a paper pusher. I woke up, I ran fucking 3 miles, I got screamed at for a fucking half hour, then I went to a fucking office job in utilities, and then I worked a paperwork job for fucking 8 hours. And then that was my fucking day. So that has if you can run 3 miles, and if you need to take HRT or E or whatever in order to fucking get by, then there's no real reason for you not to be able to do what I did. So you could basically create 2 fucking classifications, one being combat arms, people who are on the front line, who are deployed for long periods of times, and that you can have all the current standards that you have. You could look at the medical preclusions that are preventing people from coming into the military as it stands right now, and then basically make them non-combat arms. So you could have the Rainbow Coalition of fucking everybody who wanted to serve coming into the non-combat arms side, and then you could still reserve a certain level of discretion and discrimination for the infantry. Prime, I want to give you more fuel before you object. So basically addressing Empress directly, the U.S. exception to conflict theory. Looking at it from a historical perspective, I think the reason why we're an exception to this is because we are the military wing of liberalism, whether you like it or not. So basically what happens is all liberal democracies who have human rights and all this kind of crap, they export all of their killing to the United States. And as a result, we kill everybody because we're trying to make everybody liberal. I understand that that's silly, but if you look at basically the neoliberal agenda, the neoconservative agenda, it's all about exporting American commerce and American culture either through trade or through the sword. And I think that was kind of the sociological analysis that's missing from whether or not like liberal democracies and people with rights don't get into conflict. When you say
we already know that social phenomena has an effect on U.S. conflict specifically.
Well, and
so
but
like this is not a strict theory. There are many reasons that the U.S. is engaged in conflict more than its liberal neighbors. Like there's a variety of different reasons.
Sure, and like I'm not trying to like poke holes in the theory. I'm trying to add color to it. And then when you say demasculinization of like these social institutions, I get incredibly uncomfortable. And the reason why I get incredibly uncomfortable is because at the end of the day, there is no demasculinization of slaughtering people. There's just nothing about it that's femme. Like you show up, those are the people that we need to kill. You fucking throw flinging hot fucking 1,000-mile-an-hour fucking metal into their bodies. Their families are all fucking sad. One of your boys gets killed. You're fucking sad. There's nothing femme about fucking violence. But at the same time... Okay, so
all I'm saying is, right, the femcat boy squad will be coming your way.
Hold up. They might have something to say about this. Did you just say that gendering violence
is weird?
Gender violence is weird? Gendering violence.
The fact that we're like gendering violence, like violence is like a gendered act.
99.5% of global combatants are male. Like this is like
please help me out.
Warfare is a highly gendered subject matter.
So yeah, it already is. Mean that like it isn't the case. I'm just saying it's fucking weird.
I mean, gendering anything.
Society does it because there's a lot of reasons society does it.
Yeah, it's already the norm, right?
Everyone's seen the IDF chick at this point. Okay, everyone's seen it. That's all I'm saying. I'm just leaving it there.
Okay, look.
Empress, can you say what I want to say, but have a blood vessel perk?
I wasn't even thinking about that when I said femme cat boy army, but like,
leave your kink out of genocide, okay?
All right, please.
Holy shit! Terrorist organization or catboy?
I'm more thinking that it is kind of weird to do that.
That we gender violence?
I mean, because but everyone is capable of violence, right? So like, yes, the combatants in a military, combatants in a military tend to be male, right? Because males are physically oftentimes.
Hold on. We are losing the plot right now.
Holy shit!
No, we're not. We need to go down this road.
Also, the inverse.
That I can take this where I want, but it's like, so what? Like, within the military, it simply makes sense that there's more men than women. All right, not that women can't complete a mission, but like it just makes sense that there's more men than women within those ranks, right? So that in itself in the stat does not tell me that we should gender violence, but whatever.
More women's representation in government is directly correlated with lower propensity towards entering conflict and lower internal corruption. These are like things that there is a well-documented set of empirics for the gendered nature of state.
Do you think that's because
violence.
It's like inherent to masculinity, or do you think it's because society is assigning as a masculine trait in the first place?
It's mostly because of the social impacts and methods behind violence from the state specifically. I don't think that violence itself is gendered, but right now we're not just talking about violence generally, we're talking about a specific kind of violence. I think
Everybody,
that's important to recognize.
you're literally about to make me fucking stroke out. This
Okay,
is
so
fucking wild.
sure off in a second. But going back to like the topic at hand though, counter. I thought you've kind of did, the best job previously, not recently, but previously, when
That's
trying to talk about the how to structurally change these things and
I'm
whether it's
trying.
possible at all. Right. I think part of the problem is that we didn't actually define what was the problem with the military. So like Connor, you tried to do that in terms of like defining the mission, like we're gonna kill these people, right? I disagree with you on the CIA, that the CIA is simply an intelligence gathering services. That is long gone. The ship has sailed and it's simply gathering intelligence and also doing a great job of it. But this like we understand that the CIA enacts lots of violence like on its own throughout the world, especially this happened after 9/11, right? That's a thing that happened. They are embedded with special forces, like we know this. But anyway, like what exactly don't we want them to do, right? And can we change them? And if we change the organization, right, internally, will that also change the external forces being placed on them, right? So I think you were going somewhere interesting with that previously, Connor. So for instance, again, trying to define the mission a bit, right? Like the CIA, actually training individuals heading in like Latin America, right? That would like to go knock over a government, right? Or to destabilize governments, right? Or to train go down, train individuals so that they can fight communists. By communists, I mean like poor fucking farmers in the mountains, right? And here's how to slaughter them effectively, right? So those are the missions of like the CIA that we give them, right? Also torturing. There's the one thing. Yeah, we did that, right? So like, could you change these things from the inside? Well, these are also missions given to them by our government, right? But then there's also, again, there's that thing about internal inertia, right? So like, for instance, the fact that in the CIA, no one like went to jail for like the punishment, sorry, the torturing, right? Like that we did. Like no one went to jail. That was the thing. They literally destroyed the evidence. I think the current CIA head, or maybe it was Trump's CIA head, the woman that he put in there, she was the one who literally destroyed the evidence of the CIA torturing, right? And so with that, right, that tells me that if it happened again, how will we know, right? They'll just like, oh, we'll just make sure not to make any evidence next time, right? We have a CIA director who's sympathetic to all that shit because she was involved in it last time, right? That
seems separate from the issue.
Let me finish the point.
Okay.
So relating it back to the ads, right? Back to the ads. We're talking about having a diverse set of people involved within the CIA, right? What does that work? How does that work? How does that help, right? Like if there were more black individuals, right? If there were more of our trans brothers and sisters that were there, right? If there were more gay people, and if there are people who were more leftist like me, right? Well, how does that change the actual structural incentives of anything? How, does that ensure that, well, what if the CIA is given a mission? The best I could see is that, like, if there's more than one way to doing that, right? And there's a way that doesn't involve slaughtering villagers, right? Which is something that we do, right? Slaughtering villagers, then maybe they'll take that option. This is the best I can think of. But Connor, I said a lot of things to you. And then Nacho and Sprout.
Yeah, so you did give me a lot.
Check the
And
group chat, Prime.
Basically, here's the thing that I want people to conceptualize about like power, violence, and politics, because all these things are like basically interlinked on a spectrum. I think it's Clausewitz who basically said that war is just politics by other means. So, and if we understand politics to be the accumulation and exercise of power, then we kind of see how these things are interlinked, because power, as Mao Zedong, known neoliberal, said, basically, power is rooted in the barrel of a gun and like all that kind of shit. So basically what happens, whether the power is rooted in like documentation, political figures, rule of law, it kind of does boil down to enforceability. Enforceability correctly has the word force inside it, because you have to be able to enforce anything that you're putting up. All of that to say that force can be used for good or ill. And force can be basically, it's used by the people who wield it. So what you're kind of asking me is, if we get more diverse people into the American superstructure of power, how is that going to modify the way that we wield power? Well, the ways that I can think of already. So if Empress is correct, that basically when we get more women into high positions of power, our willingness to engage in violence kind of drops precipitously. Then if you had people who are high ranking in the CIA, even though that one bitch from fucking Trump is a bitch, maybe there would be more people who would be like, hey, no torture, this is not ethical, right? We're not doing this shit. Fuck Bush. We're not doing enhanced interrogation. We don't care how hard he fucking asks. Also, when you're talking about, this was coming to mind when you were talking about like people slaughtering people, we might be more sensitive to slaughters around like ethnic or LGBTQ issues. So, for instance, Obama, despite getting
exactly right, by the way,
lauded,
you're right on the nose.
Yeah, so Obama was lauded for trying to pull out of Iraq, but actually what ended up happening was we created a power vacuum and then people were slaughtered. The Yazidis being a people who were literally trapped on a fucking mountaintop for several weeks, and we were debating whether or not we were going to watch thousands of people butchered on live television. Maybe if you had people who had more immutable characteristics that had been persecuted their entire lives and were now part of the power superstructure, maybe they would be the ones who would say, fuck that, we're not watching 5,000 people being butchered on live TV. We are going to intervene. We are going to prevent this fucking genocide, because these people have immutable characteristics that they can't control. They're just like me, and I cannot morally stand by while these people are being butchered. And that would be an example of responsible use of power. So one of the things, though, because this gets really complicated. So for instance, you brought up the fact that like enhanced interrogation is one of the great black marks in American history, that we used torture in order to gain evidence in the war on terror. Well, one of the kind of side effects of torture or enhanced interrogation being banned is that we no longer take captives. We don't capture these people anymore. We just kill them. So instead of these people being brought to Guantanamo Bay, being held for fucking 20 years without a fucking lawyer, and then maybe like if they were found out to be a lower level person who was like an unwilling pawn or some shit like that, right now Special Forces is just fucking, they're just hitting them with a fucking drone strike or running into their house and fucking executing them. So this is kind of the thing where the way you exercise power is more complex than I choose not to wield it because I don't want to hurt anybody. You wielding power hurts people. You not wielding power also hurts people. And that's something that I want people who are listening right now, that's something that I want them to consider, is that if you have the shoe on head, we're just going to withdraw from the global stage and let everybody else fucking do whatever they're going to do, you are basically condemning hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people to death. This is my last point and then I'll yield. Yeah. So my last point is, in Afghanistan right now, everybody is really excited, including me, that hopefully by September 1st, 2021, we will be withdrawn from Afghanistan. I am sincerely hoping that that is happening. But what we've already seen is a Taliban offensive that might take Kabul. And I said this a few weeks ago on the fucking panel show. What we mean when U.S. troops pull out of Kabul is that the corrupt government of the central Afghan government may not stand on its own, and representatives, female representatives, women who have gone to school for the first time in a century, are going to be put back in their fucking society to the fucking back of the bus. If they try to go to school, they're going to have acid thrown in their face, and female representatives who had the balls to become elected officials in their country are going to be executed in the street. And that is because of American withdrawal, not intervention. Yield.
So I had two like main clarifying questions for Prime, but I wanted to let you like finish your point. What external forces do you think or
You're right
know are influencing the CIA? And then I
Um,
have another one too. I don't know if you want me to ask
like
both
the
of them.
executive branch that gives it its orders, right? That's one.
Okay.
And then beyond that, there are national interests, right? Like we do have national interest in various parts of the world. And how do you protect those and first of all, how do you identify those national interests, which is one thing, right? And and then
Like
how do you
pandering to other countries or whatever. So
well, I mean, just like it's a lot of things. So
we're just trying to
without
keep on
going down
terms.
that,
So.
but sure. But anyway, one, identifying those national interests. Two, figuring out how to protect those national interests, right? And how to deal with like our rivals. Our rivals is another one, right? Like Russia and China and I guess whoever else. Well, not Venezuela. And again, how identifying threats like Venezuela, right? Like is Venezuela an actual threat to the United States, right? What action should we be taking there, right? All those things are external forces, right? That the CIA is not necessarily in control of, right? And they're like political forces, right? Like how bloodthirsty is the country, right? So there was an external force.
You're like how many hawks do we have on one side or the other?
Yeah, and there was an external force that was pressed on the CIA previously that was called 9/11, right? And so the response to that, the response for the country from that helped dictate how the CIA respond. It didn't dictate it completely, so like they didn't have to torture, right? They could have infiltrated these terror
But it was an
networks.
external force.
But it was an external force. So yeah, these are all the things yeah. So hopefully I answered that question.
Yeah, I was just that answered my question. I was just genuinely curious about that. And then like what do you think diversity would have to do with this? And this is like also maybe towards Empress too, because I think I had my wife was calling me to tell me goodnight, so I had to hop up to answer that. So I didn't know if Empress brought up something as far in regards to like what diversity, because you mentioned something about like having women in places of power might affect this. I don't know what you brought up there. So this is kind of like
Yeah. So I was
maybe
actually
both of
just
you can
throwing
answer.
something into chat because someone posted some quite literally data looking at centuries of kings and queens rather than actually looking at modern conflict theory. So I was grabbing the sources on that because Kyo pointed out to me. So thanks to Kyo for that.
So
But yeah, so I threw a paper in chat. It's by Mary Caprioli on gendered conflict. There is a direct correlation between certain policies, causal link, right? We can actually see why these things happen between having women in parliament and certain types of policies around conflict, around corruption, around women's rights, around human rights generally. This is like a very, very strong correlation that's seen consistently in political science across institutions.
Yeah, because I didn't know if it was like in reference to like women like in the private sector, just in general. So I didn't know what the relation was.
Happens in the private sector too.
Yeah, so if there were studies to prove that, I was like, I could see that, but I would still wonder like how diversity, like overall would change like the orders coming down the pipe, because I mean we saw like Obama going in hope and change, and then he comes out like gray haired, like a full head of gray hair like 3 months later, and it's like he looks like he's seen the devil himself. So it's like obviously there's
Caprioli
probably
goes
more
into it in detail.
He did.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, like, obviously, there's probably a lot more that goes into these situations, and I think counterpoints like touched on this a little bit. Like, obviously, there's a lot more that goes into these things, and from the outside looking in, we can say like, well, this is a terrible thing to do, but then if we torture this person and we get the information on the leader of the leader of the leader, and then we can stop them from bombing like 30 cities across America. It's still a shitty choice to make. Like, do we torture one person to save, like 300,000, or do we just say like, oh well, we'll just drone strike them, and then those 300,000 people still die anyways?
Yeah, and this is all of this is not to defend fucking torture, by the way. Like we can
absolutely
we can let those sleeping dogs lie, but what I do want to articulate to fucking Zoomers a little bit, because they get to evaluate the global war on terror fucking in hindsight with fucking 2020 perfect fucking vision. We had 3,000 fucking people butchered on live television on American soil. That was alarming a little bit. And then also like billions of dollars in damage. and we didn't know when it could fucking happen next. We had no fucking idea. So there was an entire decade afterwards of pure, like, unadulterated paranoia. There was literally like fucking suitcases found in a Walgreens in fucking Tulsa, Oklahoma, and because they had like white powder on it, they shut down fucking city blocks because they thought it was like an anthrax attack, and all it is fucking like dried dish soap.
But
So
there was
like,
anthrax as well.
I remember the anthrax
Yeah.
scare even reached like the more rural areas.
And
Of course.
we never
Pretty
got a
terrifying.
solution to that problem either, by the way.
And Rand
Yeah.
Paul just got like a package of white powder like just today, actually, or at least reported up today. But let's
Right.
go to Sprout, and then I want to actually yell at Counter some more.
Okay. So I do have a question, kind of clarification as Empress walks away. Never mind, I no longer have clarification from Empress. Oh, now I have clarification. Okay.
She's like,
So I did want to ask you. So the studies that you had said that more women or more kind of diversity in power, as you get that, it becomes the conclusion was that it becomes less violent. Is that correct?
The state becomes less likely to engage in conflict, less likely to engage in hyper-militarization. There was a number of variables she looks at.
And you said it studied on medieval.
No, this study is, I was saying someone had thrown a study into the chat that was looking at 15th to 20th century kings and queens, and it found that queens were more likely to engage in warfare than men.
Okay.
And actually, counterpoints, this goes back to what you were saying before about women wanting to rat out atrocity, right?
So that's
I
mean, that's the clarification I wanted. I was gonna say that.
yeah.
I
was telling that person to join us in the 21st century. My study is about modern day conflict, which is that it has a lessening impact.
Okay, I was gonna say, looking back at past times when women were involved, they oftentimes did it to kind of prove a point that they were in charge. And you can even see that if you go through basic training when you meet a female drill sergeant, you're actually more scared of the female drill sergeant than you are the male drill sergeant, because you know she's gonna twice as hard on your ass. So it's one of those things. I think having more, I kind of geared towards the military and away from the CIA in this question, because I think having more diversity in the CIA would be a good thing. I think having more diversity in the CIA would allow us to have different solutions to different problems. If we have just like one type of person in the CIA, then we're all going to have the same solution. But if we have like a whole bunch of different solutions, we can look at all different solutions and come together and go, okay, which one is the best solution for us to do right now? And to kind of go after counterpoints, he was talking about how Special Forces doesn't take captives anymore. We don't take, and so I do want to say Special Forces does not just go in and like assassinate people. The Special Forces, one of their main jobs is to go into other countries and teach their military how to fight. That is one of Special Forces' main jobs, and a lot of people don't realize that is that Special Forces isn't always just doing like high top secret class operations. A lot of it is actually going to other countries and teaching the rebels how to fight and giving them weapons and trying to groom them to be a fighting force. So
sure, but I mean, to be fair to what Connor was pointing out, I think is that is it better to just nuke them and they're dead and they can't give us any information, or is it better to like torture them? They live, they suffered through this thing. It's terrible. It's obviously horrible, but at least we can save more lives as a result. I think that was maybe the point. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Connor, but.
No, it's okay. So when I was using Special Forces, I meant that like colloquially. I wasn't referring to like the Green Berets or like the Army Special Forces. I just meant Special Forces like MARSOC, SOCOM, like the general concept of specialized ultra elite forces. I do understand like foreign internal defense. That's something that I advocate for all the time. And then basically all I'm saying is very specifically when we're talking about what used to happen in the early stages of the War on Terror is that some members like Triple Nickel and the SF guys who took Afghanistan, one of the main things that they did was they found HVTs, basically high value targets, and they took them into custody. They didn't kill them, they took them into custody. That way we could gather intelligence through enhanced interrogation, which is just a fancy way for saying torture. During the it was during the Trump administration, because Trump did not I think it might have been Obama too, but the Trump administration thought that was too much effort. Like it's too much fucking effort. So just drone strike them. And that was the order that came down, was like, we're not taking anybody alive anymore. We're just doing drone strikes because, actually it was Obama, because the optics of enhanced interrogation and torture is so bad that instead of taking captives, we're just going to drone strike them, or we're just going to shoot them. And that's kind of like I saw it on the Joe Rogan podcast from a fucking intelligence operative. So I know it's real.
So
I know it's true.
One thing that's like really interesting is that the cost of drone strikes, like the fact that drone strikes are so fucking cheap and so effective at what they do, has actually increased. And this is like one expert I've spoken to. I spoke to like a PhD who studied these. Is the one thing that they've said is that like drone strikes are really effective. They're good at hitting the targets they need to. Like there's obviously like horror stories, but they're preferable usually to ground invasions. But drone strikes are so fucking cheap that they've actually increased the number of military operations over previously because they're so fucking cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they also increase the amount of like civilian and innocent bystander deaths as a result of this.
No,
so
it's
it's
the
like,
opposite
are we going to like capture
drone strikes in comparison to you're talking about overall maybe? But you're
But
talking about
I'm
drone strikes
saying,
in
like,
comparison to ground operations. That's not the case.
The comparison I was going to make was like if we're capturing an individual and interrogating them, whatever, versus like, okay, fuck it, we're just going to drone strike them because we know this is the target. So
Yeah, but
you might have some more data here, Kielson. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but there's a lot of logistics that go into that. You need a forward operating base. You need a place for fucking those special forces guys to hang out. That fucking involves some level of the enemy being able to attack. If they attack, you're going to fire back. Also, on top of that, while you're conducting the information, you can take fire while you're on your way to the operation. There's just like a lot of variables that ground forces fucking complicate. Again, I'm not defending fucking drone strikes, dude. Like drone strikes are just as fucked up.
Yeah, no, I get it.
But the logistical fucking considerations are there, and that's why you see Trump and Obama leaning more heavily on drone strikes than on capturing people. That's my main point.
And Kielson, do you have something to point to that like would show like the difference in like I don't know, I guess civilians killed in this operation versus that?
I can go through and
I
like,
genuinely
find the
don't know
sources
this.
later if you want. But some information comes from like just talking to a couple of people
we can talk
related to
later,
drone strikes and working with drones. But I'm sure if I hit them up and I grab the information, I could pass on if you need to.
So and then I wanted to like push back on what the counterpoints have said like way earlier about like not allowing like a subsection of like, because I still think this would be a decent like step in the right direction to allow like anyone who wants to serve, even though they have these disabilities, like, but it's capped. It seems like it would be the best solution moving forward. And like the steel man that Sprout tried to give me earlier, like those who come back from active duty a lot of the times have PTSD as well as many other mental illnesses and are provided resources to deal with these things that would like these issues that would otherwise result in them never even making it in the first place.
No, they're not.
They're
obviously they're not provided resources. That's why we have such a high. That's why it's such a high rate of veteran suicide.
If you're active duty,
I'm
saying like you can go serve, you can be blown up in the back of a fucking Humvee, and then you can come back with fucking slip disc in your fucking spine, and you can be provided all that. You can be provided the mental health counseling, and you can be provided like the surgeries to repair yourself. Like you get all of those things. So like. And obviously, like our military budget is enormous in this country, so obviously the money's there. And I think it's more of like, why wouldn't we like take a step in this direction? Why not just like, you know what I mean?
Because the money doesn't get to us.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Dude, I have bulging discs in my neck and my back, and I was given x-rays. And when I went to a private doctor, and they were like, you're saying you have bulging discs, and they did x-rays? X-rays don't even look at soft tissue. What the fuck is the VA doing? Or what the fuck was your previous doctor doing? And I was like, it's the VA. And they were like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I haven't like pressed on this, but I have family who was like that story is a story from family. Like, and I don't know what as far as like whether they get surgery,
it's better than nothing.
Whatever, but I know that it's
better
something
than nothing
that was dealt with. Like, and that there are things there are resources that are provided to you once you come back from war. The point being was that like if you went in with these mental illnesses or these like disabilities going in, you would be denied. But like once you're in and you're taken care of, so it's like obviously there is room in the budget to make, you know what I mean, to cover these people. So it's like, why not maybe? I don't know if my point makes sense. Like, why not allow for?
it's not a hill that I would want to die on. Like if somebody was fucking patriotic, but they had a fucking disability that prevented them from fucking service, they were still able to provide a service to the military, and they wanted to serve
data
their
entry,
country.
anything like
Yeah. I think that's something to be honored, not fucking
There are
scorned.
exactly. There are people that would rather not do a lot of these positions. I'm sure they would rather be out in a fucking gun range, like training to go to like active duty. And there are people who would gladly do anything in the military, myself included. Anything that I'd sign all the fucking waivers
really
in the
based,
world
by the
just
way.
to serve. Like, so why not? So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Sure.
I can't express how based that is. This whole idea. I love it.
So I was
Coming together, right?
Okay.
Except for Prime, he doesn't like my band.
I was gonna just push back on something you said previously about 9/11. I mean, all those things you said were true, but I don't actually want to let the intelligence agencies off the hook because they provide their own pressure upon society, right? Yes, people were scared, and then the FBI and the CIA, or specifically the FBI I'm thinking of, helped make people more scared, right? There was the make believe, right? Rather than actually doing, and I imagine, excuse me, they might have disrupted some terrorist networks, but they also just made them up too, right? Infiltrating the communities of our Muslim brothers and sisters, and then finding individuals who they could trick into saying some yike shit on a recording and saying, "Oh, we found a terrorist. Everyone, look, we found a terrorist. And aren't you glad they were here? Hey, increase our budget as well, right?"
This happened recently, actually.
And to be like to your point, like that's what I was saying. Like this shit reached all the way to me. Like, dude, the town I grew up in was like for farmers and retirees that went there to die. Like that was our main businesses, was like farmers, and we had retirement homes. And this shit was like our teachers were terrified. We had more lockdowns in our school. It was like there were announcements talking about like, make sure you're checking your mail for like if there's any white particulate or dust on your, like, check for this. And I didn't even know, I was in like elementary school at the time, like going into middle school, I think. And it was like any white dust, it could be anthrax, anything. So like, to be fair to your point, like, yeah, I think they helped make this a lot worse, and they played it up and exaggerated it so that they could get, more of a budget, so that they could spy on the American citizens more and more, and they can gain more power. Like the government, to me, this is where my libertarian heart comes out. And it's like, I see the government as more of like this, like, self-sustaining kind of like parasite that just feeds off. Anytime you give it power, it's never going to give it back, and it's always going to be looking to gain new powers in the future.
Fuck. All right, so
sorry, not to get off on that tangent. Sorry.
No, it's fine. No, you guys are just fucking triggering me a little bit. It's all good. It's all good. So so basically, it's like, okay, the Prime, if only you knew how bad things were. Okay, so basically. On one hand, I want to give you all the credence in the fucking world, because, for instance, the reason why we knew Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction is because we spent the fucking 70s and 80s giving him the ability to create weapons of mass destruction and continuing to sell him dual-use technologies that allowed him to create the weapons that we then in turn invaded him for. Okay, so we literally took a dictator in the Middle East. We're like, hey, you're fucking crazy, but you're between Iran, who we don't like, and Saudi Arabia, who we like. So you can't fall because you're more boys with Iran than you are you're more boys with Saudi than you are Iran. Turns out he was a fucking lunatic, and he hated everybody. He hated Saudi Arabia, he hated Israel, he hated Iran. But in order to make sure that he didn't lose to Iran, we sold him weapons of mass destruction and allowed him to use them. So it's worse because we've created these messes. But what I also want to remind people, because oftentimes this comes with a certain level of ahistoricity, jihadist terrorism, by comparison to the threat that was the USSR, is fucking peanuts. selling Afghans fucking anti-air missiles so they can shoot down Soviet helicopters, that's like a fucking Tuesday during the Cold War, okay? I'm trying to think of like another example, but funding pro-capitalist death squads in South America so they could go up against the leftist government, that was Wednesday in the Cold War, because the death squads and the who is it? The brave Mujahideen, who are always going to be our friends, and we want to thank them for our service at the end of fucking Rambo. Those people are basically gangsters with guns in countries we don't care about. The people that we were actually going up against was the CCP, who committed like horrific mass political purges in their rise to power, and the USSR, who was a peer power competitor. They were nuclear. They went to space. They had jets that were as powerful as ours. If we could nuke the fucking planet 20 times, they could nuke it a fucking 100 times. And so to look at this again from like Zoomer rose-tinted glasses, where we've never had any fucking problems. Dude, the Cold War was serious shit. It just happened that we didn't fucking nuke the entire planet. So I just want people to always like contextualize the horrific shit that we've done within the horrific shit that was happening at the time.
Okay. Well, Revolt, is your hand up for something? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'd like
go ahead.
to talk to at least all of those things, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to instead point out that, like, for the original topic, we were talking about, can we change things from the inside? I want to like quote Gloria Steinem, the famous feminist from the 50s and 60s. And I think she's still alive actually, who said that the CIA was a liberal and honorable organization. And like that was while she was working for them as a officer or an agent and like doing, spy work in India and various places around the world, while like also campaigning for, women's feminism. So like we've already tried the woke CIA thing and it doesn't work.
What do you mean it doesn't work though?
The history of the CIA, started with the very first coup that they did, and nobody talks about this, but like it was Syria first, and then it was Iran, right? And then after Iran, we did some work in Saudi Arabia and Iraq, and then we eventually ended up throwing helping the Iraqis throw the English ruler out in the early 1960s, right? And that's how you get Saddam Hussein. So it's like all these things that we've touched. We're still touching because we have to, because we fucked everything up. And like,
hold the fuck up.
I don't understand. I don't understand how that's related to. By the way,
you're not on camera, buddy.
No, I know I'm not. I said it in the chat, in our local chat, that my camera's fucked and won't turn on, which is why I am like this to the audience. Anyways,
Canadian technology. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, fuck off, Prime, motherfucker. So anyway,
I don't know why we need resource rooms.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand how foreign affairs and foreign interventionism would necessarily affect how people within the confines of the U.S. military itself would be treated by other U.S. military men when it comes to like treating LGBT people and gay people and all these different groups of people properly. I don't know the history of foreign intervention is related to that whatsoever.
Well, this is what I was saying. The internal and the external. Internally, they can be liberal. Externally, they have to fucking do whatever the fucking mission calls for.
Yeah, externally, it seems irrelevant. I don't think you can fix it externally because foreign policy is complicated as fuck. Like, we have to look at it internally.
It's not that complicated. It's complicated.
It is very complicated.
Revolt, come on, buddy.
It is literally one of the most complicated subject matters on the fucking planet.
I mean, it is and it is.
Extremely complicated. It's extremely complicated.
Tell me how simple it is.
I mean, like, sure, pick a topic and we can go over like the ways that the United States has made it fucking worse.
Okay, hold on. Prime, please, for the love of God, let me address this. Just fucking 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. He's a fucking liar, but go ahead.
Okay, I did. I
lied
because I love you.
Lying, Connor.
I wasn't finished with my point yet.
I'll try to be very brief. How the fuck do you think we got oil for the past century and a half?
I mean, you are delusional if you think most of it came from the Middle East. Like what we were doing was denying access to the oil to Russia and to China.
Is that not important?
I mean, it's not like okay. Think about what we're saying here now. Like
We're
get oil. Were we
pivoting so
dependent on
hard.
it? We absolutely were not. Like no. Like in fact, like in a lot of ways, the Cold War was a completely like inflated and like imaginary problem that we fucking created for ourselves, and like it's propagandized to fucking the ends of the world.
No. like no. Like no. Authoritarian fucking. Okay, I know we're way off topic, so I'll fucking shut the fuck up. But like,
goddamn.
But okay, we are way off topic, so I don't have time for this right now. But to everything you just said, no.
I know. I understand that you don't.
Holy fuck!
Because you just told me that it was very complicated, but I just explained how easy it was. Like,
yeah, just let fucking Soviet Russia and the fucking CCP do whatever they want for a fucking century and a half. What could happen?
I mean,
I don't know.
That's essentially what the outcome was anyway.
If we could have better actors in the United States, would we have better actors? Would we prefer to have better actors in the United States on the world stage? Yes.
I mean, yes.
Yes. Right. Because the United States does some pretty shitty things sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Is the United States better than China and Russia in a lot of instances?
Especially in the 20th century, absolutely.
Yeah.
Goddamn right.
I think 20th century is a little less cut and dry. It's a little bit more cut and dry, to be honest.
Yeah, if you go 20th century, it's a little more contract. I'm not even here to argue that. What I was originally trying to say was that like the goals and the missions of the CIA, right, have been fucking like have been set, and they're a momentum. Like there's a momentum behind them, and it's a course and an arc that it is taking, no matter what anybody does, no matter what their what I mean, like what their gender identity is, or progressive or liberal or right wing.
Okay. You got to do what you can. You can't just wipe out the fucking military and have the U.S. become an isolationist country. Like we have to figure out shit we can do right now. Right?
Great. Anyway, to my audience, we are going to be rolling on to our open walk-on panel right after this. A panel which you sitting at home, I'm talking to you. You can be a part of it. You can jump in and give your opinions, right? And you can raise your blood pressure like our good friend Connor does all the time. Right?
I interrupted.
Oh, we didn't talk about suburbs. I was so hyped. I was so excited to talk about housing policy.
Yes, please. I want to.
Me too. I fucking love talking about housing.
All
Holy
I
shit.
Can we keep the third topic and the bonus topic? Because I was ready for this. And I like them.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
that's
so
what we're talking
mad.
about.
I won't be able to be here next week.
We'll talk about them
Next week.
Next week, yeah. Hopefully Agent 10.
Oh no.
Because Agent 10 wants to talk about that too. Actually, which is surprising. The reason I haven't put those front loaded those topics is I thought no one would be really interested in, and I didn't think of anything better. But apparently you guys do. All right, this is great. All right.
Well, I'm a neoliberal.
To be fair, I feel like that's like one that most people are going to agree on when it comes to housing. But housing is the problem. Like if we can fix housing, we fix a fuckload of problems in society.
I'll be here all night.
Kia was absolutely right. Prime. I will pay you $500 to let me on to the one where we talk about housing. I will pay you.
You will pay me $500.
Much money.
500,
no, but
like real dollars
but the
or Canadian dollars?
500 Canadian dollars.
500 Monopoly dollars. How about that?
Okay, how about a gifted sub for Prime? How about that?
I will, absolutely.
Wait,
let
if
me on that
everyone
fucking
in the
panel
panel
goddamn.
gets Prime a sub,
I love talking about housing. I fucking love it.
I'm surprised. Okay, all right, then I gotta. Well, that's good because I came with that topic a long time ago, and
I'll be able to fight with lefties on it.
Okay, all right. Well, Connor knows he'll already be here, so that's why he's not even.
I just want Judge Dredd mega cities. Give me mega cities, okay? I want to live in an apartment building that's really big and has a Woolies in the bottom, so I can go downstairs, get my Cheez-Its, and go back upstairs and go back to beating off the porn, okay? Just let me live.
Well, you're a leftist, so that makes sense.
You know what?
So.
I almost unironically like oh fuck, I'm blanking on the I almost want the world Coruscant from Star Wars.
God, what is wrong with you fucking people?
Coruscant.
You know how terrible Coruscant is, right?
No, well, hold on. So Coruscant, in case for those who don't know, and we are going to go to a walk on panel. It's a world, right? It's a city world, right? So the entire place is urbanized, like all of it, right? Any green space that you have is like scattered, and on top of fucking buildings, and then they've built up the buildings that cover Coruscant, like to miles high, right, over thousands of years, right, the miles high, right. That sounds magical to me, right? I will love that, right? Like green spaces is
The lore of
probably.
Coruscant is literally that most of the people live in squalor in the lower levels,
Oh,
and that it's
that
a
part-
hive
that
of
part-
scum and
hold
villainy.
on, no. Okay.
Like this is
No,
this
no,
is what
wait a minute.
leftism
The
gets
hive-
you,
the
and why I need to
hive of scum and
radicalize
villainy
y'all towards
is in
post-leftism. Okay.
Tatooine, excuse me. All right.
Okay.
And two, right? I would want to change that, right? Like with my socialist tendencies, I'm just talking about the structure. I didn't say anything else about that. All right. Look. All right. I feel like
I thought socialists were supposed to be into Star Trek, not Star Wars. What the fuck?
True.
you are
Star
boy.
Trek's fucking
¿Por qué
lame.
no los
boy.
dos?
Anyway.
True. Star
If
Trek
I
is
had,
fucking
if I
lame.
had my way, right, we'd be in the cube. Look at the cube. Look at the beautiful cube. You fit all the population on Earth in the cube, right? I just want everyone to get in the cube. That's it. That's all I want. Get in the cube. Let's have one big cube.
I hate this shit so fucking much.
Oh boy. All right. Well, we can talk about that next week. Another reason for you and my audience to come back. All right. So we're gonna give these individuals a closing, and they can tell people where they can find them. And then we'll go to our open walk on panel. If you've been just joined us and you've enjoyed this content, do yourself a favor, hit that follow button right this second. Hit that follow button, hit that notification bell, so you know I'm going live because we do this content 6 days a week. I want to see you back here. Okay. So let's take things mirrored to my screen. Let's go with the lovely Empress.
So, I think that this has been a great way to expose how important diversity and local politics are. So anytime we get to draw more attention to those issues is a win day for me. So I'm happy. My name is Empress. I host a show called Radio Underground. You can find me at www.empress.fm. That'll give you all my social media. It'll also give you links to the Politics Discord server and the Twitch Politics Discord server. You should join. We have fun.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Oh, and an exclamation point. Paul. Well, exclamation point do be in chat. That's where you're going to. When Empress is trying to lure you to the Politics Discord server, that's who you'll be meeting. So there's a link in chat, discord.gg/politics. Okay. Next, we will go to Revolt Rise.
Sure. Yeah. I guess in summary, we didn't get through the housing and infrastructure bill, but we got close with talking about how the CIA is lying to us about just about everything it's ever intended to do. I think that's good. And also, I think it's super important that everybody support their local newspaper and, like help bring those institutions back, because those are the literal, means of the truth to make it into your life. So yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Pro and Hendrix, and you can follow me here, Revolt Rise, and also on Discord, Revolt Rise, in the Twitch Politics Discord server, where I am a mod and I hang out all the time. So come argue with me if you don't like any of my takes.
I'm also over there a lot. It's fun.
It's true.
Thanks so much. Next, Connor. Connor, people are telling me in chat that the Warhammer 40k version of Earth is even better than Coruscant.
It is! I was literally going to say that in my outro. Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Please, no. Tell me about it. I don't know anything about it, actually.
Oh my god, it's awful, but it's so much cooler. So there's a video game that's coming out. It's called Necromunda Hired Gun. Necromunda is a hive city, which actually incorporates all of the worst things that everybody has been saying for the past 20 minutes about Coruscant. And you play as a mercenary that goes between all these rival gangs, and you have like a fucking dog, and the mechanics are kind of like Doom. And this is just one tiny fraction of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. And basically, I could really probably talk for 20 minutes about Warhammer 40,000 lore, but if you want to find more of that, you just need to come over to my channel. Start with the Astartes video, Astartes. It's the best science fiction film produced in the past decade. So if you want to see, and it's fan made, it's made by one person. The graphics are phenomenal. The animation is phenomenal. If you haven't heard of it already, you need to fucking get on the train. So check out the video first, and then check out my reaction to it afterwards. If you want to find me, literally just exclamation point counterpoints in the fucking chat, or counterpoints exclamation point.
Extra Connor.
Oh, exclamation point Connor, Conor. And then if that doesn't work for you, just jump into YouTube, typing counterpoints into the search bar. We're about to break 7,000 subs, so I'm really excited about that. And then at 10K, I'm going to start monetizing, so I'm really excited for that. And then basically, if you like violence, military stuff, law enforcement stuff, science fiction, political rants, or Twitch panels such as this, then please come on over. Also, before I yield, if you are not following Prime, follow Prime. If you are not subbed to Prime and you have the financial ability to do so, do so. I have done this as well. I am no longer a hypocrite, and you should fund this beautiful program that he allows us to do. So thank you, Prime, for having me again.
So much. He's awfully proud of his sub these days.
Very proud of it. No longer a degenerate fucking like white named fucking piece of shit in chat. So yeah.
You are a degenerate now.
That's true, but not for not subbing to Prime.
He's a fucking dude. Fuck
I
this
have
guy.
decreased my degeneracy by 1%.
Oh, thank you so much.
Not saying much. Connor, not saying much.
Shadows. Beautiful.
Shadows,
Interesting.
you're muted, dude.
Yes,
You're muted, dude.
like poetry.
Neoliberalism failed, man. Fucking can't even import good technology. Unmute yourself, motherfucker.
One Canadian has problems with audio, the other Canadian has problems with video. It's
I
great.
don't have problems with audio. My
So
audio
I
is
just
fucking
have problems with Canadians. Hey?
So I am Shadows. If you are like surprised that I'm actually talking and looking at the camera, yeah, that's a thing now. Sorry. Sometimes the boy just has to jam out and crank out some tunes on the piano. You feel, you know what I mean? That should just happen. You gotta vibe out. So yeah, if you are someone who's interested in public policy, if you're interested in econ, or if you're just interested in talking about politics to a liberal, or if you're interested in watching someone play piano, if you're interested in the arrangement or composition process and you like music, stuff like that, or even if you like video games, like right now I'm doing a Pokemon Diamond randomized Nuzlocke and it's pretty lit. Come on over to my channel and follow me, and yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, next, layman. If you come to the States, right, and get yourself a freedom-loving private health insurance plan, right, we will also give you, as part of the package, a working camera. How does that sound, buddy?
My camera works fine. It's just not working right now for some fucking reason. But I appreciate that, Prime. I'll ask Mr. Biden if he'll accommodate me. Because obviously I'm capable of contacting him personally. Anyways, yeah, everybody. So my name is Layman. I love the panel. It was fun, as always. I think I got along with people pretty well for the most part, as I usually do, because I'm a fucking Canuckian, and we like to be friends with people who we disagree with here. If you would like to see more Canuckianism or Leafism or whatever the fuck you want to, whatever fucking label you want to put on it, I've just put my YouTube channel in the chat. You can sub to me there. I talk about politics. Sometimes I talk about philosophy. Sometimes I talk about fucking religion. Yeah, if you're into that, check me the fuck out. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, all right.
I wonder, one second. I wonder if your camera's Canadian made because it only works half the time it's supposed to.
What the fuck's that supposed to mean?
You don't care because it's all Brit Bonger shit.
Okay.
That's
Sprouticus, right? Like now you can look at Sprouticus' room. He's a damn good God-fearing American, right? And what do you know? His camera's working just fine. Coincidence? I don't think not. So Sprouticus, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Well, first off, I want to thank you, Prime, for having me on. I've had a lot of fun in the panels that you've had me on. So, but I don't have a cool exclamation mark command like Empress and Connor do. You can find me at TheSprouticus on Twitch, where I talk politics. I actually play games sometimes. I'm trying to get more into that. I'm playing Ghost Recon Wildlands right now. So politics and gaming is what you're gonna find on my channel. More so politics and gaming, but hey, I'm still here. So, good, proud American man, and I love talking to everybody. So
Yeah, And we want to thank you specifically because it's kind of hard to find conservatives here on Twitch that want to consistently engage. So we're actually really happy to have you around. So thank you for spending time here.
No
Stop
problem.
bullying them, you fucking assholes.
I'm not. Anyway.
Hey, Canadian time is expensive, you know.
Yeah, I'm gonna need 600 USD for this panel tonight. I'm afraid.
Oh boy.
I'll convert it myself for you.
You're gonna
It's fine.
get $1 Canadian, which is still
You're
worth
gonna
fucking
shut the
nothing.
fuck up.
You'll just take 600 Dogecoin out. Yeah,
You'll get nothing like it.
American Nacho.
Yeah. So again, if you're not sub to Prime, sub right now. Take a title loan out on your car, sell your house, do whatever you have to do. Take out a second mortgage to sub to
This
Prime.
is not financial
okay?
advice.
Don't do that.
This is no, okay. No, but if you're not supporting Prime, support Prime. If you don't have the financial means to support Prime, dude, just like and share all the shit, okay? Because he does a lot of good stuff. He invites all ideologies to come and argue and scream at each other on the internet. It's pretty awesome. So do that. Also, I play video games, mostly Rocket League and Rock Band. Usually I do Rock Band after every panel that I'm on, but I'm at my brother's house, so I can't do that tonight, unfortunately. But come and follow me at on Twitch, on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I don't keep up with YouTube as much. I mostly live stream and then I'll upload when I can. But yeah, go do that. I play video games. Come 1v1 me in Rocket League. It's part of my reward, so come try it out. That's my main game, and I'll play basically anything else, chess included. So, and again, thanks for having me on. It was an awesome conversation with all you guys on the panel. So,
Thanks.
Me and Nacho actually have a chess game coming up.
Oh, we do? Well, now
Yeah.
we do. Let's go.
Next, last but not least, our good friend Kill. Kill, from Australia, right? I know, he's so exotic. But he's here to spread his culture to the rest of us. So Kill, thank you for being here and classing up the joint. Tell the world about yourself and your exotic lands.
Thank you. So thank you for, as usual, for having me here, Prime. Always happy to come and do stuff. You'll find my link tree in chat, which has just got all my links, but it's pretty much everything that's ending with Kyosan.au. So you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and I need more on the TikTok. That's that's a fun platform. So if you want to come out and hang out, we've been doing policy discussion lately. Good old debate. That's a good fun one. Rhetoric reviews. We're doing more. I've got the next couple of weeks off, so I should be streaming every day. We're gonna do more experimental streams. So this week we've got a really exciting beer tasting stream coming up. I'm gonna go to the local Dan Murphy's. We're gonna have a couple of brewskis, eh? We're gonna have a couple of beers, and I'm gonna go back and do another drunk history, which was a fun segment we did last time over Gallipoli. This week's drunk history is gonna be on the Eureka movement in Australia. So if you're interested in hearing the time that workers actually revolted against the government for gold mining licenses, come and hang out for that. Should be fun. Next week I have I won't say will right now because I'm still planning it, having a fundraiser for Lifeline, which is an Australian charity that deals with people who are depressed and maybe considering suicide. It's a hotline you can call to deal with that because it's the 1 year anniversary of a very tragic thing that happened in my life. So we'll be doing a fundraiser for Lifeline. I would love it if everyone came along to that in particular. So keep an eye out. And to keep an eye out, you're going to have to check all my socials, which is in the link tree I gave, Kyosan.au. Thank you so much for having me on Prime. By the way, counterpoints, I hope you have a tabletop simulator because one of these days I'm going to beat the pants off of your Warhammer. I'm going to dethrone you as the Warhammer guy in Twitch politics.
Fuck yeah.
When are we going to do a board game stream, honestly?
Ooh.
Hell yeah.
I did do Secret Hitler, and someone was asleep for it during my streamathon.
I wanted to try Secret Hitler on the channel one day. Maybe something we could do.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. But that was a long time ago. I haven't gone back to that in a while. Anyway,
Do some Risk.
okay. All right. I gotta keep my audience. All right. So moving forward, we are going to roll on to Open Walk On panel right now. Anyone here is welcome to join us, but if not, That's okay. Thank you for spending your time, your energy, your passion, and knowledge with my audience. I know they appreciate it just as much as I do. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.